In the pre-martial law years, state patronage for the propagation of culture and the arts was virtually nil and limited. And this lack of patronage resulted in the pathetic state of the arts and culture. It may be said that the last award, or perhaps the one and only activity that the government undertook before 1972 was the Commonwealth Literary Awards given in 1940. As support was lacking, cultural groups did not last long, died natural deaths without coming out into full flowering. Okay, so laws were enacted to articulate the constitutional provision for the patronage of arts and letters, to namely Republic Act number 1370, June 18, 1955, Republic Act 3042, June 17, 1961, Republic Act number 4165, August 4, 1964. Republic Act 1370 created the Music Promotion Foundation of the Philippines. Section 3 of the Act spelled out the goals of the foundation. The foundation shall initiate, promote, and stimulate the creation and rendition of good music by means of grants, loans, and other forms of assistance to qualified persons and institutions applying therefor. Shall encourage, protect, and aid the organization of clubs and societies throughout the Philippines for the promotion of music. Shall create scholarships in build an old theater to be known as the National Theater of the Philippines, and shall from time to time conduct contests in musical composition and rendition, granting prizes to winning contestants in cash or in the form of scholarships. Whenever necessary, the foundation may organize benefit concerts anywhere in the Philippines to raise funds for the payment of said prizes and maintenance of such scholarships for the attainment of the objectives of this act. For its initial operation, the Music Promotion Foundation was appropriated the amount of 100,000 pesos. 6 years later, its appropriation was raised to 400,000 pesos as stipulated by Republic Act number 3042. Republic Act 4165 provided for the creation of the National Commission on Culture, providing funds for it. The said law consists of long provisions of the duties and powers of the Commission, which included, among others, the following: integration and coordination of national policy on culture, coordination of cultural activities, formulation and implementation of a national cultural development and promotion program, awakening of a new consciousness of and defining new approaches to the country's culture, promotion and encouragement of foreign cultural exchanges, and stimulation of interest in cultural pursuit among both the young and old alike, including the filling of popular cultural needs. The commission was to be composed of a commissioner and 14 members to be appointed by the President of the Philippines with the consent of the Commission on Appointments. In the new society, the commission, far from being suspended or reversed, in fact became the Institute of Arts and Letters, basically invested with the same function with the minor change of having only one commissioner representing the 7 arts. Moreover, the new society pursued the realization of the commission's envisioned tasks that otherwise would have perhaps remained as literal provisions if martial law was not proclaimed. In 1970, now let's talk about the quest for the establishment of the new society. In 1970, President Ferdinand Marcos had bared his quests for the establishment of a new society, a society that was the full embodiment of a transformed people. Speaking of the mutual relationship between attitudes and economic conditions, President Marcos stated that development, which the new society hoped to attain, largely depended on the harnessing of our humanitarian instincts in the service of national progress. Our economic conditions, he said, determine our social conditions, but in many ways, our social attitudes will dictate how much economic growth we can achieve. Our societies still retain traditional features which hinder development. But we must understand that these traditional features often reflect our own regard for what is human in us, as we can see, for example, in our close family ties and friendship in the Philippines. Our problem is how to harness our humanitarian instincts to the service of our national progress and prosperity. Well, there is little doubt that if we were to disregard these instincts, we could achieve economic development, but at the risk of dehumanizing our peoples. In 1971, President Marcos, in his State of the Nation address, decried the ills of the old society, a sick society that needed a violent rooting out. He said that people had already become impatient and were thirsty for a change. What was needed, he said, was a revolution that should be done in the democratic tradition. And this democratic revolution, he said, called for the rectification of a social and economic order that has prejudiced popular hopes and expectations. He called for the immediate restructuring of the social order beginning that year. He strongly believed that democratic revolution could alone forge a strong and enduring unity of our nation. President Marcos was convinced that the democratic revolution was the ideology that seeks to transform society. Democracy, in sum, is the revolution, he maintained. An ideology, he argued, should reflect the historical experience, hopes, fears, and expectations of a people. In concept and inspiration, President Marcos asserted that the democratic revolution was Filipino, as it is rooted in the people's demands that brought about the revolution of 1896. Looking back, the revolutionaries articulated a society with a strong set of moral standards based primarily on the desire to liberate the people from oppression. We are, in many ways, under changing circumstances, he remarked, still waging this revolutionary struggle. Now, why was it necessary to establish a new society? The necessity of instituting a new society was a demand of that glorious epoch of the revolution that saw the greatness of the Filipino people and their ability to build the noble edifice of the First Asian Republic. And this necessity dates back to the anti-colonialist struggle of 1896 for a political authority that would be the instrument of national independence, a promoter of the Filipinos' moral and intellectual development, his economic and social well-being. This demand continues to this day, and through the years, the government has been trying to satisfy it through all the vicissitudes of development. The demand has become more acute, owing to the growing complexities of the modern world. President Marcos underscored the fact that the democratic revolution was a rededication to the historical aspirations of the Filipino people, but it makes demands not only on the political authority itself, but on the very foundation of the authority, the people. The people's welfare lay at the center of the new society's program. It was a society in which economic activity promotes the interests of the individual and welfare of the whole. Its attainment necessitated an assertive leadership, the exercise of the authority of the government, whenever these needs are not being served. It required a collective action between the private and public sectors. This outlook was a direct contrast to the old society, primarily characterized by a weak government and weak people and power factions, all of which presumed to speak for the people. Now, how are we going to describe the spirits of the new society? The transformation of the Philippine society was premised on the necessity of a cultural reawakening that the new dispensation believed would help achieve its twin goals of economic as well as cultural development. Mrs. Marcos harped on the idea that development must address both the material and the spiritual aspects of life to invest it with full meaning. She articulated such thought in 1966, long before the proclamation of martial law in the country in 1972. She said, "It is my particular mission not only to help enhance our awareness of our cultural heritage, but to advance our cultural development hand in hand with attainment of our economic goals." It was this humanistic vision that defined the spirits of the new society. It wanted to avoid the tragedy of separating the material from the spiritual that would spell a crisis rather than development. The First Lady, Mrs. Imelda Marcos, emphasized the new social order's commitment to transform the Filipino into a total whole person. The new society pursued the vision that sought to realize the total potential of man, the goal of assurance, the continuous evolution of the distinctly human attributes of mind and spirit. In the new society, the idea emerged that a true and meaningful development cannot take place without the spiritual component. To say that development relies only on the material aspect is to belie the other equally important aspect of life, which is the spiritual. Economics is for the body, culture is for the soul. Man is both body and soul. Economics and culture must go together in accord to make a person whole. Okay. So let's talk about the cultural rebirth. The new society witnessed a cultural rebirth, and this cultural reawakening was focused on a recognition of the vibrant cultural fabric of the country and a commitment to purge it of foreign elements that worked to weaken it. For culture to be truly the vanguard of change as it embodies the collective aspirations of people, it must not be alienated from its very source, the people themselves, but must in fact reflect their aspirations and ideals. This cultural orientation of the new society was a celebration of the cultural identity that was gained and assimilated through the long years of colonial experience to the present. The effort to acquaint the people with what they possess became the catalyst, the moving force for artistic achievement, all propelled by a strong desire of the government to effect social transformation. In the process of transformation, it was necessary for the government in the new society to invest its cultural policy with a broad Filipino outlook. The government sought to make the people aware of their vast cultural heritage and integrate it into the living national life, thereby making it a vibrant part of the living tradition. The goal of nation building was premised on the institution of a new society whose artists, imbued with a fresh outlook and dynamism, would become partners in molding man's holistic development, reflected not only in the material but also in the intellectual as well as spiritual aspects. The First Lady gave importance to the humanistic endeavor of committing ourselves to what is totally human in order that we become most complete. She postulated the view that nationalism is humanism. As mentioned earlier, the total development of man was the supreme concern of the new society. This total man, Mrs. Marcos said, is heart, no less than the mind, the reflecting heart and the feeling mind. Mrs. Marcos expressed her views on the need of total cultural revolution, emphasizing its integrative ability to foster order, peace, and understanding, and bringing humankind together. Culture is the conquest of hearts, the beginning of nothingness. It is not yours, but God's. To my mind, culture is the umbrella for foreign affairs, education, finance. All departments should be integrated under culture. Through culture, we understand the capabilities of a people. It has deeper meanings and wider dimensions. Through music, dance, and drama, we feel the articulation of a soul. We must know our beginnings, know where to go forward therefrom. Total cultural revolution involving politics, religion, arts, means the totality of a civilization. It is the only unifying factor to bind the world together, the one that can bring peace, and it is not having to be expensive either. When my heart is full, I become a poet. My heart sings. The artists are the prophets and progenitors of civilization. The deeper responsibility of cultural entrepreneurs like us is to plant the right seed in the gifted young in our involvement with culture and the arts as purveyor of civilization. Mrs. Marcos had this to say of the government's intent to preserve and nourish our national culture. We cherish our culture because in its manifestations lies the meaning of our existence. It contains and nurtures our motivations, our hopes and aspirations as a people. We aim to preserve it and nourish it, determined as we are to remain truly Filipino in the pursuit of progress. Our identity, our cultural integrity remind us that the human beings is sovereign through wealth. Okay. So, state patronage. 8 months after the proclamation of martial law, the government showed its sincerity as patron of arts and culture when it brought Article 15, Section 9, 2 of the 1973 Constitution to provision. This statement, in a culture should be preserved and developed for national identity, and arts and letters shall be under the patronage of the state. The Order of the National Artist Award, or then ng Gawad Pambansang Alagad ng Sining, was established under Proclamation number 1001, dated April 27, 1972, to give appropriate recognition and prestige to Filipinos who have distinguished themselves and made outstanding contributions to Philippine arts and letters. And here is the full text of Proclamation number 1001 by the President of the Philippines, Proclamation number 1001, declaring Ferdinand our solo national artist, whereas art is an expression of the national genius, whereas artists should be given the appropriate honors for their contribution to the heritage of our society. Whereas it is necessary that we create a category to be known as national artists, which will be a national expression of gratitude and appreciation. And whereas the paintings of Fernando Abel Solo in all his years of creative activity have defined and perpetuated a distinct element of the nation's artistic and cultural heritage and won universal acclaim for our country and people. Now, therefore, okay, so I will have to forgo this, forgo the reading. Let's proceed to the next. Now, the Order of National Artists aim to recognize, number one, Filipino artists who have made significant contributions to the cultural heritage of the country, Filipino artistic accomplishment at its highest level, and to promote creative expression as significant to the development of a national cultural identity. Filipino artists who have dedicated their lives, their works to forge new paths and directions for future generations of Filipino artists. Pursuant to Proclamation number 1144, dated May 15, 1973, 7 persons were named national artists in their respective fields: Francisca Reyes Aquino, Dance; Carlos B. Francisco, Painting; Amado B. Fernandez, Literature; Antonina Music; Juan Nakpil, Architecture; Guillermo Tolentino, Jose Garcia, Literature. Awarding ceremony, then First Lady Mrs. Imelda Marcos recognized the importance of the role of artists, which is overlooked. The artist has a peculiarly important place in the developing societies, yet it is in developing societies that this role is often overlooked. The need for social and economic development is imperative, but movements without orientation in terms of values is self-defeating and futile. How to keep these two imperatives in balance has always been the test for statesmanship. The necessities of material growth have often obscured the requirements for spiritual development. It is the artist, and the artist alone, who gives significant form to the human and social experience. Now, what is the importance of the role of artists? The 7 national artists whom we honor today possess this quality in abundance. Though they live in our time, they belong to the future, for it is their vision and rare insight which hopefully will shape the brave new world tomorrow. The International Artist Award was conferred on June 14, 1973, 2 days after the National Art Awarding ceremony took place at the Cultural Center of the Philippines. The awards bestowed on artists of foreign nationality who had contributed to the advancement of the arts and culture of the country. And the first recipient of the award was the internationally renowned American pianist Van Cliburn. Other recipients were the prima ballerina Dame Margot Fontaine and Russian cellist and conductor Mstislav Rostropovich, who received the same award in 1976 and 1983 respectively. In recognition of the Filipinos' innate love for music, the national competitions for young artists was formally organized in 1973 under Presidential Proclamation number 1173 and amended on November 1988 as a response to the imperative need to develop and promote Philippine music as an art and as a handmaid of cultural development. NAMC had become a principal medium for discovering, encouraging, and developing young talents, as well as for preserving, developing, and promoting Philippine music as an art and handmaid of national development. Many of the country's musical artists have left an indelible mark both in local and international musical scenes were NAMCIA babies. By virtue of Presidential Proclamation 1173 issued on August 7, 1973, to underscore state support for the holding of the competitions, the government promulgated observance of the celebration of National Music Week in the last week of November, if only to accentuate state support for the holding of competitions. From that year on, the NAMCIA has been organized during this week. Stressing the importance of music in the national life, Mrs. Marcos argued that music is an important element of our young people's education. She went on to say that music is not only a cultural mark, but also an honest search for our identity as a people. The rhythms that our people have created and will continue to create serve as the mirror of our national soul. The new year 1974 ushered in a strong awareness of ethnic music. With staging of Ugnayan 74, the entire country became the venue for its holding. Ugnayan 74 is a project of Mrs. Marcos. It featured the commissioned work of Jose Maceda, National Artist for Music, 1997, which lasted for 50 minutes. The music made use of indigenous instruments on tape and was simultaneously broadcast over 20 radio stations. Music became a medium for social interaction, illustrating how art and industry could be fused together using a musical setting. Okay, participants were told to come to a designated place in the community with a radio tuned to a specified radio station and together experience an integrated manner of music making. This pursuit became a potent means of rediscovering and hearing the country's indigenous tradition. Now, what logistics and infrastructure did the Marcos government lay out to pursue its cultural policy? Cultural development cannot be achieved in a vacuum. For culture and the arts to flourish, the proper logistics and infrastructure must be amply provided. Having developed a vision of strengthening the cultural fabric of the nation deemed significant in the achievement of total national development, the government established structures for the flowering of culture and the arts in the new political order. The need for a national theater was acutely felt in 1965 when Mrs. Imelda Marcos, in the midst of a political campaign in Cebu, announced publicly her intent to build what is now the cultural center of the Philippines. She deemed that its construction as a shrine of the Filipino artistic soul was an indispensable part of the total effort towards development. This concern was one of the highlights of the campaign platform of Ferdinand Marcos for presidency. When Ferdinand Marcos assumed the presidency, Mrs. Marcos carried on with her plan of building the CCP. On April 17, 1966, the groundbreaking ceremony for the CCP was held on its present site as stipulated in Proclamation Number 20, dated March of the same year. In her speech, Mrs. Marcos lamented the alienation of the artists from the people, saying this was worse than the physical destruction brought about by the last war. She observed that this alienation had deprived our countrymen of the joy and enlightenment which can only come from the beauty and order of the arts. She went on to say, there will rise up here a theater, an art museum, and a library. It is our hope and our intention that our remaining cultural treasures and our works of art to be exhibited in a manner and in the surrounding that they deserve, that our performing arts be so developed as to reflect our traditions, that the fine arts be expressive of our sentiments, that the Filipino audience be increasingly enlarged, and that our young children be raised in an atmosphere of what is good and true and beautiful. Witnessing the groundbreaking ceremony, President Marcos acknowledged that artists must enjoy full freedom in the pursuit of excellence in their profession. The groundbreaking ceremony was held following a successful fund drive by Mrs. Marcos. The fund drive drew strong financial support from many donors for this project. In May of the same year, around some hectares had been reclaimed from the sea and construction work began. In February the following year, the outline of the CCP started to rise slowly but dramatically against the sea. When the construction was completed in 1969, the CCP appeared like a floating mass against the sea. It was an architectural feat designed by Leandro Locsin, one of the top artists in the country. The CCP, known for its simplicity and majesty, was envisioned as an architectural landmark that would foster the arts of our time and preserve the heritage of the past. Now, prior to the construction of the CCP, there was no venue for the performing arts that would equal CCP's magnitude. Performances were rather limited, often in the cramped confines of school auditoriums or inadequate gymnasiums. Performance artists and audiences recognized such a problem. A national theater was conceived under the sponsorship of the Philippine American Foundation in 1957. The envisioned National Theater's design was done by Locsin himself. It would have risen out on a 10-hectare lot in Quezon City had the plan materialized. However, there was an impasse among its chief planters. Pursuant to Executive Order Number 30, issued in 1966 by President Marcos, the CCP was formally established. The CCP was built as a trust for the benefit of the Filipino people for the purpose of preserving and promoting the Philippine culture in all its varied aspects. The CCP was mandated to construct, establish, and maintain on a single site a national theater, a national music hall, an art gallery, and such other buildings and facilities necessary or desirable for the holding of conferences, seminars, concerts, and the like. President Marcos named the members of the Board of Trustees who had to elect the chairpersons. Among them, Mrs. Marcos as chair, Antonio Madrigal as treasurer, Ernesto Rutino as assistant treasurer, Horacio de la Costa, SJ, Juan Ponce Enrile, then Secretary of Justice, IP Solyonco, Andres Soriano Jr. When the CCP was inaugurated, Mrs. Marcos emphasized the importance of the its establishment born in times of hardship as a symbol of unity. She pointed out again the role of arts and culture as a stimulus to the achievement of the ultimate economic and political destiny of a nation and the enrichment of the values of the people. Part of Mrs. Marcos' remarks read as follows: should this building stand the test of time so that our children's children unto the 10th generation will one day gaze at its beauty, the future shall call us fortunate. For more important than this is that until the dust of its last brick shall have been washed away by the ocean tides, this center shall serve as shrine for the Filipino spirit. It shall be our Parthenon built in a time of hardship, a spring source of a people's living conviction of the oneness of our heritage. For history teaches this lesson well, that the monuments of man's hands which have remained alive and endured are those which are built as sanctuaries of the soul, which despite all the winds of change and adversity, keep eternal vigil in the halls of time. Today, we too are people of courage and of faith in the future. We are young and struggling to understand ourselves, trying to construct the nobler meaning of our race. Our greatest strength lies in being truly what we are, by nature and grace, one people, by fortune and by faith, Filipinos. Yet so long as we know ourselves, we face the dangers that face the very young, a lack of soul, vagueness of values. It is the purpose of the center to enrich the minds and spirit of our people and foster among others a true understanding of the Filipino self. The CCP was specifically tasked with the following: to awaken the consciousness of our people to our cultural heritage and them to assist in its preservation, promotion, development, and enhancement, to cultivate and promote public interest in and appreciation of distinctive Philippine arts in various fields, to discover, assist, and develop talents that are valued to Philippine cultural pursuits and create greater opportunities for individual and national self-expression and cultural affairs, to encourage organization of cultural groups, associations, or societies, and the holding or staging cultural exhibitions, performances, and similar activities. The CCP was likewise mandated to invite foreign artists and groups to perform for the local audiences. As such, the CCP could fulfill the other equally important function of arts and culture as a potent vehicle for the promotion of world peace and goodwill, in addition to broadening artistic or cultural understanding. Okay, for its initial presentations, we have here a 3-month music festival, Zarzuela, a full-length ballet, Merenisa. A music festival was held for 3 months, lasting for a month and a half. An international music festival formed part of that festival. Dularawan, a masterpiece of Lucrecia Casilag, National Artist for Music, 1989, was a featured Philippine work of the opening night. The commissioned works of some Filipino composers were also featured. These were Alfredo Benaventura's Philippine Panorama, Luciano's Sacramento's Violin Concerto in E minor, and Sister Maria Rosalina Abejos' Oratorio Pagtubos. Our Zarzuela in 3 acts on the libretto of Clodoaldo del Mundo, Anong Tamis sa Mga Sandali sa Sariling Bayan, composed by Colonel Antonino Benaventura, National Artist for Music, 1989, was the first Zarzuela to be mounted at the CCP. It was directed by veteran Repertory Philippines director Zenaida Amador. A full-length Merenisa held as the first in the country was performed in 1969. This ballet was based on National Artist for Literature, 1973, Jose Garcia Villa's short story that bears the same title, with music composed by Eliseo Pajaro and choreography done by Tita Radek. Now, resident companies were attached to the CCP. These were CCP Dance Company, Ballet Philippines, the Philippine Philharmonic Orchestra, PPO, Teatro Filipino, Bulwagang Gantimpala, Philippine Madrigal Singers, Bayanihan Dance Company, Opera Company of the Philippines, and CCP Museum. Allow me to say something about the PPO and the Philippine Madrigal Singers. The PPO was formed in 1982 with a nucleus coming from the CCP Philharmonic Orchestra. It was established in 1973 with Luis Valencia as conductor. It was conceived primarily to lend assistance to Filipino as well as visiting artists. In her desire to elevate the PPO into a major orchestra, Mrs. Marcos designated Oscar Yatco as its music director. Yatco formed up a distinct concert season, emphasizing the capability of the Filipino musicians to form a world-class symphony orchestra. Okay, and he was convinced that with the right training, incentives, and right programming, the PPO will be able to achieve its goal. And today, the PPO is not only hailed as a country's premier orchestra, but also widely regarded as one of the top musical outfits in the Asia Pacific region. Now, the Philippine madrigal singers, on the other hand, under Master Veneracion, National Artist for Music in 1999, flourished under the martial years, with all the encouraged support given the Marcos government. It acquired its status as resident choral company in 1918, as should its present name in lieu of the original UP madrigal singer. So in short, from a campus or university choir, it grew into a national choir supported by the states. Okay. So there were also some musical organizations that became affiliates of the CCP. So these were the League of Filipino Composers, Pasaknungan Philippines, Las Piñas Bamboo Organ, and Young Artists Foundation of the Philippines. Okay. Now, outdoor concert venues, we have Concert at the Park, Paco Park Presents, and Puerta Real Evenings. The CCP also came up with a viable outreach program aimed to bring arts and culture to the grassroots. And complementing this outreach program was the student development program geared towards involving the students through the holding of matinee programs and allowing them to attend rehearsals. And then actor for cultural development, so you have the Folk Arts Theater, National Arts Center, and the Metropolitan Theater. Okay, so just a few words about this theater. Okay, so I'm done with the other concert venues. Okay, so you have here the Folk Arts Theater was dubbed as a monument to the Filipino spirit. It was designed by Leandro Vilocsin and has a seating capacity of 8,500, inaugurated on July 7, 1974. It was inaugurated on July 7, 1974 with the holding of the pageant Kasaysayan ng Lahi that portrayed the evolution of the Filipino nation. It achieved international attention when it became the venue of the 1974 Miss Universe pageant. And then you have the so needless to say, the FAT achieved an appeal for the masses. Ordinary people frequented popular presentations that featured
Doc Joey, nag-mute po kayo.
I'm so sorry. So the FAT achieved an appeal for the masses. Ordinary people frequented popular presentations that featured local entertainers and pop singers. Popular presentations were made more appealing with the performances of foreign pop artists and entertainers. Now, in consonance with the effort of the government to provide infrastructure for cultural development, the National Arts Theater, NAC, was put up in 1976 in Mount Makiling. The NAC houses the Philippine High School for the Arts, PHSA. It formally opened in 1977, 1978, and gained popularity as the only specialized school established to nurture and develop the artistic talents of budding Filipino artists, and continues to receive national support from all sectors. Mrs. Marcos, in her inaugural address in 1976, said, "Makiling is a metaphor of our dreams. For legend finds the goddess Maria Makiling there, the goddess of beauty and of bountiful generosity, the goddess of profound justice, the goddess who sacrificed herself for the love of humanity. There lies love, the love which moves the artist to create what is noble, what is true, and what is beautiful for all of us. The National Arts Center is a symbol of ourselves, of men sharing a common cultural heritage, of a national culture belonging to the totality of civilization, in the continuing discovery of our human fraternity. What is human, therefore, cannot be a stranger here. What is divine cannot be alien. So in 1978, in their capacity as governor of Metropolitan Manila, the Metropolitan Theater met the city's prime venue for the performing arts in the 1930s that was ravaged by World War II was restored largely through the efforts of Mrs. Marcos. The restoration was done faithfully to conform the theater's original design. The Met became the venue for the production of musical revues involving the country's top composers and engaging the country's top entertainers. It pursued a direction towards the development of an audience eager to respond to an exciting and meaningful form of Filipino entertainment. So some of the outstanding composers, we have Lucrecia Casilag, and she provided a much needed impetus through commissioned works and access to the CCP as a veritable venue for the performance of the composer's new works. Okay, and then you have here Jose Maceda, okay, and then Antonio Benaventura and Lucio San Pedro. So, siguro a few words lang about this composer. So we have already said something about Mrs. Dr. Casilag. Maceda is largely remembered for his Ugnayan, a composition he wrote in 1974 that was used to promote social integration among community residents. And then you have here, standing as a bridge between the masters and the new crop of composers who were schooled in the 1930s and who dominated the cultural musical scene after World War II was Antonino Benaventura, National Artist for Music in 1988. He was, according to Dr. Hila, he was not only a fine composer, but also a competent conductor and a dedicated educator. He was an esteemed authority in band music. He actively advanced the cause of band music in the Philippines. And then it is also in this period under review that Lucio San Pedro wrote extensively and made arrangements or rearrangements for the choir, choral singing, according to Dr. Hila, reached his favorite speech in the new societies. The government encouraged choral singing in government agencies, and activity to soon followed by the private sector, exemplified by commercial banks and entities. And then, of course, we have here some of the gains. So let's talk about some of these gains. So you have the Cecil Likod. So in 1981, Cecil Likod brought honor to the country when she was named recipient of the prestigious Leventritt Award. It was a validation of the Filipinos' capability to get international recognition. And then you have Rowena Arrieta. He was among those who was sent to Russia by the Young Artist Foundation of the Philippines to study the prestigious Moscow State Conservatory, where she graduated with highest honors. One review reads, Rowena Arrieta has never failed to enchant her listeners. Her yearly visits are always laced with unforgettable performances, which are not enough to satisfy her audience, or are they sufficient for her to share a vast repertory acquired from her studies in Moscow and New York, two opposing yet complementing music capitals of the world. Okay, and then you have Coke Bolipata, Alfonso Coke Bolipata, a graduate of the Gilliard School of Music, is the moving force behind the Metro Manila Community Orchestra, being its founder and artistic director. Then you have Renato Lucas, a NAMSHA winner, is one of the country's leading concert cellists, apart from being a teacher at the USC Conservatory of Music. And then maybe we could also mention Julian Jojo Kirit, who's based in Sydney, Australia. He was a recipient of the YAAP and graduated from the Gilliard School of Music. He was guest conductor of the Philippine Philharmonic Orchestra for several times. And then, of course, you have here Raul Sonico, who also studied the Gilliard School of Music, where he received his master in music, and at the New York University, where he obtained his doctorate in piano. And then you have Giuliani Emmanuel Cruz. Okay, he was a winning guest of the YAP Scholars. He was an alumnus of the Manhattan School of Music. He divides his time between teaching and performing. He's teaching with the University of the Philippines College of Music, and some of his students are NAMSHA winners. And then you have Aris Cases. Is another pianist who enlivens the musical concert stage with his engaging playing. He studied not only piano in Graz, Austria, but also conducting. And of course, you have some of the outstanding talents. We have here some of the winners of the NAMSIA, who are pursuing their careers abroad. Maybe I can cite some. You have soprano Andion Fernandez, tenor Leodario del Rosario, and baritos Jonathan Sáenz and Andrew Fernando, among others. And then, of course, you have the Philippine Madrigal Singers. Is another important entity to consider, and there's no doubting the fact that choral singing is being actively pursued in the country today. In the early 1960s, these choral groups were the exclusive concern of some universities, where they were dissolved as quickly as they were mounted after singing on some important occasion. Okay, so by way of summing up, the new society envisioned the transformation of the Philippine society, aiming for the realization of the total potential of man. The new society pursued a vision that views the material and the spiritual aspects of life. In the new society, total development cannot proceed without spiritual or cultural transformation of the people. And the new society proved to be supportive of the development of the musical arts. And to develop the musical arts, administration provided the logistics and infrastructure. The new society created vast opportunities to kindle the creative prowess of the Filipino musicians, thereby advancing the cause of the musical arts. Indeed, the new society reaped tremendous gains from the support and patronage it gave to the musical arts. Thank you very much for listening.
Ayan, isang salamat po, Doc Joey.
You're welcome.
At salamat po sa isang makabuluhang pagdalumat at pagbabahagi sa amin ng inyong at syempre lalo na po sa mga mag-aaral ng Cavite State University. Excited po ako na makabasa kasi ang alam ko ni-require ni Sir at ni Ma'am na gumawa ng reaksyon papel ang mga estudyante. So excited po ang Sir Hill na makabasa ng mga reaksyon papel mula sa ating mga mag-aaral. At maging ako po ay napawaw doon sa panayam ng Dr. Joey sapagkat aminin ko man po, sir, na ako ay martial baby din. Pero nung nag-aaral ako sa Lyceum ay pag sinabing tara sa Cultural Center, ay panigurado sa labas po kami doon sa likod, hindi kami doon sa sa loob. Ayan, mababagaan siya ng pulis, etc. etc. Mga ganong karanasan po. So, bago po tayo magsimula sa ating talakayan, ay gusto ko po munang shoutout po muna doon sa binanggit ni Dr. Joey, no, ang aking pong professor sa historiografiya sa kasaysayan, ano, si Dr. Antonio Hila. Shoutout po. Kumusta na lang po sa Dr. Hila at natatandaan ko po sa aming kalendaryo ay meron din po kaming paanyayang susunod sa Dr. Hila naman. So, salamat po, Doc Joey. At para po sa ating mga katanungan at ayun po yung aking binanggit na kanina do sa chat box, maaari po ninyong ilagay ang inyong mga katanungan. Sasagutin po ng ating tagapanayam. At sa bahaging ito po ay binibigay ko ang mikropono sa atin pong moderator, si Professor Jong Bagay, na siya pong magpapatakbo ng malayang talakayan natin na susundan po ito ng paggagawad ng sertipiko at isusunod na po natin kaagad ang susunod po nating tagapagsalita. So, maaari nyo na pong ilagay sa chat box yung inyong mga tanong. Take it away, Sir Jong.
Magandang umaga po ulit sa lahat ng ating online listeners. Lahat po ng mga naka-tune in sa ating FB Live at sa ating Zoom link. Okay. So, maaari na po nating basahin ang ilang mga katanungan. Sir Wilbert, ang ating po mga tanong ay available na sa ating GC.
Yes po, Sir Jong, may sinend po ako sa ating group chat.
Mukhang bagal na signal natin, sir. Wala po pong nag-a-appear dito sa akin.
Siguro po ay ang Sir Hill muna ang magsisimula ng ating mga katanungan hanggang hinihintay po natin yung iba pa. Doc Joey, of course,
Yes.
familiar po tayo dyan sa Cultural Center of the Philippines, Philippine Center, et cetera, Folk Arts Theater. At of course, yan po ay isa sa may pagmamalaki nating magandang kontribusyon, no, sa New Society nung panahon na yon. Sa palagay nyo, Doc Joey, sa lahat ng yon, alin kaya ang masasabi nyong pinaka-importante, pinakamahalagang kontribusyon, partikular ng dating unang ginang sa state ng musical arts sa Pilipinas nung panahon na yun?
Siguro sa aking palagay, lahat sila may tuturing kong pinakamahalaga dahil sila ay katulong para dito sa pagyabong ng ating sinasabing musical arts. Kasi kailangan natin ng national arts, nandiyan yung National Theater, nandiyan ang Folk Arts Theater. So ito yung mga ilang infrastruktura na itinayo para mag-flourish nga ang ating musika at ibang kultura. Professor Hill.
Salamat po,
Okay.
Doc Joey. Sir Jong, meron ba tayong mga katanungan dyan sa ating Dropbox?
Meron po isang tanong dito at ayaw nang magpabanggit na pangalan. Ang kanya pong tanong ay, has the development of arts and culture been sustained or even further improved matapos daw po ang rehimeng Marcos? Parang ang tanong po ay, obviously napakarami pong development na isalang ang unang ginang nung panahon na yon. Parang ang tanong po ay, ito daw po ba ay na-sustain or even na-improve noong mga sumunod na panahon? Siguro hanggang ngayon.
Maraming salamat sa katanungang yan. Sa pagbabasa ko ng libro ni Dr. Hila, mababanggit na malungkot na hindi, paano ba sasabihin, hindi na-sustain yung pagtataguyod sa kultura, sa musika, katulad ng ginawa ng ating unang ginang. Mas sugid na itinaguyod ni Mrs. Marcos ang ating musika, at iba pang mga kultura. At sabi nga dito, sa mga sumunod ng panahon, ay hindi na-sustain ang naturang pagsusumikap na mas mapayabong pa ang ating kultura. Maraming salamat po.
Maraming pong salamat, Dr. Joey. Isa po uling tanong ay may kinalaman din po ito sa sustaining the gains during that period. So ang tanong po ay, based on this historical data on the development efforts of the Marcos regime, specifically his first lady, did the vision of molding the young Filipinos to what is good, true, and the beautiful materialize beyond the edifices and programs of the government during that time?
Sa tingin ko naman ay, kasi hindi naman pwedeng, ang sinasabi nga ni Mrs. Marcos, kailangan yung pagsasama, yung pagbibigay ng importansya sa material na aspeto at saka sa spiritual na aspeto. So sa tingin ko naman, nagawa naman ng administrasyon na makatulong, ang tanungan, kung nakatulong ang mga programa para sa kabataan. Sorry, Professor Bagay.
Parang ang tanong po ay, lumagpas daw po ba yung na-achieve ng mga ginawa ng rehimeng Marcos doon po sa mga infrastruktura, sa mga programa, sa mga awards, at even yung mga recognitions na na-receive ng mga panahon na yon. At ito daw po ba ay nagkaroon ng mga konkretong epekto sa mga kabataan noong panahon na yon?
Oo. Oo. Nakatulong kasi higit sa awards, higit pa sa iba pang mga recognition na yan, napukaw yung kamalayan, no, ng mga tao. Nilapit ang musika sa mga kabataan, inilapit ang hindi lang naman sa mga mayayaman kundi maging sa mga sinasabi nating mga sinasabi nilang pang hindi mayaman, ano. So nadala, no, ng rehimeng Marcos ni ng unang ginang ang kultura, ang musika sa iba-ibang klase ng tao. So beyond, no, the awards and beyond recognition.
Maraming salamat po, Doc Joey. Doc Joey, ito po ay personal kong tanong. Marami po kasing mga nagko-comment dito na ang tanong ay tumutumbok sa ipagka-political na angulo, particular ang mga usapin tungkol sa mga pondo na nailagay o nagamit sa pagsasakatuparan ng mga magagandang proyektong ito ng unang ginang noong panahon na yon. Siguro po ang tanong ay, paano po kaya natin, hindi man mabago, ay paano po kaya natin mabibigyan ng maliwanag pang perspektibo ang mga tao sa mga hindi ba ikakailang positibong anggulo na ito sa development ng culture and arts noong panahon na yan? Sir Joey? Doc Joey?
Professor Jong, hindi ko maintindihan
Okay.
choppy.
Sige po. Ulitin ko lang po. Meron po mga ilang katanungan dito ng ating mga estudyante. Parang 3 po yung nabasa ko na. At halos pare-pareho po ang mga tanong nila na tumutumbok sa issue o doon sa kaisipan ng marami na tungkol po sa mga pondo na ginamit para maisakatuparan itong mga proyekto ng ating gobyerno noong panahon na yon. Siguro po ang magandang tanong dito ay paano po ba natin hindi man natin mabago, paano po ba natin mabibigyan pa ng isa pang maliwanag at mahalagang perspektibo ang mga kabataan para makita din nila yung objektibong kahalagahan ng mga nagawa nung panahon na yun.
Okay. So, sa pag-aaral ng kaya, ang masasabi talaga kahit si Professor Teodoro Agoncillo, sinasabi niya na kailanman ang kasaysayan ay hindi magiging objective. Nariyan parati ang element of subjectivity. Okay? Kasi pag sinabi natin objectivity, the historian is supposed, according this is to Teodoro Agoncillo, the historian is supposed to detach himself from any entanglement with what he's writing in order to avoid intruding himself into the picture. So pag nagsulat, iniaalis niya yung sarili niya doon sa mga sinusulat niya. So hindi siya bahagi ng kanyang sinusulat. So wala yung elemento ng mga biases and prejudices. Pero para bang napakahirap naman na isipin kapag ikaw ay historiador at nagsulat na madidetach ka. Kung isipin mo, isang tao ka rin naman eh. So sabi nga ni Agoncillo, it is impossible for the historian to be detached because he is a human being. So what is best for him to do is to admit that he's capable of erring, of having passions and prejudices, hate and love, and sympathy and antipathy. Okay. So kung mahirap yan sa element of subjectivity na sinasabi dyan, ang tinutumbok ni Teodoro Agoncillo ngayon ay impartiality. So he batted for impartiality because to be impartial is to be fair. Okay? So in impartiality, the historian is asked to look at all possible sides or angles of a question. Having given all sides and airings, so to speak, the historian is asked to draw his own conclusion, which necessarily will favor one or the other. But in favoring one side, it cannot be judged unfair or partial since he exerted efforts to present all sides of the question. His conclusion may show his bias, which is natural in any person, but he cannot be properly accused of being unfair. So dito sa pag-aaral ng rehimeng Marcos, so kailangang ipakita yung dalawang panig, yung maganda at yung hindi maganda. So pag nakita mo na yung dalawang panig, ang sinasabi ni Teodoro, then you come up with your conclusion. Na kung may biases pa rin, that is natural. But he was saying then, but you cannot be properly accused of being unfair. Kasi sabi nga, interpretation varies, but facts remain the same. So katulad ko, maraming magsasabi na yung CCP, pag binasa niyo yung mga blog ano na yan, may mga sasabihin na ginamit ito para mas lalong umangat ang posisyon ang power ni ng Marcoses, sabi nga noon. But that is one side of the martial law. Kaya nga ang sabi ng webinar ninyo is ang iba pang mukha ng martial law. So you look at both sides. This is the other side, ika nga, the other story, the other narrative na ipinapresenta dito. So maring ito yung mga facts, nandiyan yung CCP, etc. But yung aking presentasyon na base sa ginawang pag-aaral ni Dr. Hila na isang cultural historian ay nakabase doon sa kanyang framework na kailangan para magkaroon ng total development, nakaangkla yan sa yung pag-develop ng hindi lang ng material, yung economic, kundi pati na rin yung spiritual o yung cultural aspect or cultural component ng buhay. Okay.
Maraming salamat.
Okay, thank you. You're welcome.
Okay. Another question po, galing po ito sa Kabsu Imus. Ang tanong po ay, was folk country music such as those of Asin, Heber Bartolome, Florante, etc., a response to the high society musical arts sponsored by the regime?
Well, alam nyo, maybe, no? Kasi wala naman akong, hindi naging bahagi ng aking presentasyon yan. Pero ganun pa man, no? Ang masasabi dito, yung bang mga ginawa ni Marcos, yung mga shows nila, ay para lang ba ito sa mga pangmayaman? Yun yung sinutumbok ng asin, o maaring baging response, no, doon sa elitist music sinasabi diyan. Pero nalapit din natin ito sinasabi dito na may mga issue ng elitism, may mga bias for foreign performances, but nakikita natin na dinala nga, di ba? Nakita natin dinala ang musika sa concert at the park, di ba? May mga venues. Sinasabi nga dito, the issues, no? I would like to quote Dr. Hila, the issues of elitism and bias for foreign performers was found to have no basis at all, as it was more of perception rather than reality. The new social order precisely provided the right atmosphere for the understanding and appreciation of the musical arts, precisely to promote the transformation of the new society. The new society had even granted scholarships and even set up a school for the arts to combat this compounding cultural malady. Festivals and national competitions were held. There were outdoor venues for performances. There were outreach concerts in the provinces, all aimed at bringing meaningful change. Siguro mas kailangan pang pag-aralan pa yung ibang mga musika na binanggit ng ating nagtanong, Professor Jong.
Sir Jong, meron isang tanong dito sa ating chat box. Hopefully ay okay lang sa nagtanong na malaman yung kanyang pangalan, ano? Miss Lay and Andrea something. Doc Joey, ito po ang tanong. Sir, what's your suggestions for youths who are now more aware of the history of our country? How can we use their voice in order to be part of Philippines' progress in the next years? From Miss Lay po yan.
Para sa mga kabataan na nag-aaral, magbasa at intindihin ang mga binabasa. Kasi nakakalungkot na bagamat sa gawa na naka-pandemic ngayon, gawa na rin sa naging karanasan ko, hindi natin alam kung may pagkakataon pa para magbasa ang mga kabataan o nag-online games na lang sila, no? Huwag naman masasaktan, no? At kung magbabasa, intindihin kung anong binabasa. Hindi agad-agad tinatanggap kung ano man ang mga binabasa. Hindi sa Facebook University na sinasabi, naniniwala sa mga sinusulat sa mga blog. You should have a critical mind. Kaya nga nag-aaral, tinuturo sa kasaysayan, tinatawag natin critical thinking. Mag-isip. Hindi lang sa mga facts lang yan, pero you go beyond the facts. Kung anong sinasabi ng mga datos na yan. So the how and the whys, no, kailangan masagot. Ngayon, mahalaga siguro para marinig ang boses ninyo, isang paraan siguro diyan ay siguro ngayon sa darating na eleksyon, no? Bumoto sa mga nararapat, lumahok sa mga organisasyon na may kinalaman sa mga national issues, iparinig ang mga boses sa mga social media platforms at iba pa. Yun lang naiisip ko pa so far.
Salamat po,
Okay.
Doc Joey.
Okay.
Ito po siguro ay huling katanungan na lamang bago tayo maggawad ng sertipiko. May halos kaugnay din po nung isang tanong. Ito naman po galing kay Ace Espinosa. What can you tell, sir, sa mga nagsasabi na ang history daw po ay boring? Any advice po para sa mga taong nawawalan ng interes sa kasaysayan?
Yan ang kalimitang sinasabi na kasaysayan daw ay boring. Boring kasi siguro ay base sa naging karanasan ng mga bata sa kanilang pag-aaral ng kasaysayan. Kung magme-memorize lang, no, kung ililista lang ang mga datos sa chronological na pamamaraan, magiging boring nga. Because remember, history is not a mere listing of events or of the facts, the places, names of persons, etc., etc. It is not just a mere chronicling. That is naive realism. Pag nagbasa ka ng dokumento at inilahad mo lang kung anong nakita ng mata mo, hindi yun kasaysayan. Kasi marami ang nahihirati doon sa pagtingin na ang kasaysayan ay yun lamang mga listahan ng mga pangalan ng tao at iba pa. Ang kasaysayan ay interpretasyon. So philosophically speaking, kung nabasa ninyo yung libro ni Dr. Hila, philosophically speaking, history is interpretation. Okay? And interpretation is not done in a vacuum. Meron kang parating punto de vista. Ano ang frame of mind mo? Ano ang perspective mo? Ano ang paraan ng pagtingin mo? Kasi kung halimbawa, kung nagsulat ka ng kasaysayan ng panahon ng martial law, hindi mo maiwasang madala ang biases mo riyan. Halimbawa, kung ikaw ay laban kay Marcos, ay may masama kang karanasan, huwag naman magagalit sa akin yung mga tao riyan. Syempre, iba ang paraan ng pagtingin mo doon sa kasaysayan. At iba rin naman ang magiging paraan ng pagtingin ng mga tao sa hindi naman naging biktima o sa hindi nakaranas ng ano. So wala namang sa interpretasyon ng kasaysayan, wala namang tama o mali. It's a question of validity. Whether the interpretation is when can you say that interpretation is valid? It all depends on the facts. So kung paano mo sinuportahan yung interpretasyon mo ng mga facts na yan, iyon ang magiging basihan ng validity. At parating dadalhin ang pasts sa kasalukuyan. Sabi nga ni Benedetto Croce, every true history is contemporary history. O yung sinasabi ni Gadamer na fusion of horizons. You always have to bring the past to the present. Ano ang kaugnayan ng past sa kasalukuyan? So, halimbawa, kung nag-aaral ka ng kasaysayan, makikita mo halimbawa nung panahon ng Amerikano, meron ka na tinatawag na free trade. Okay? Pag dinala mo yan sa kasalukuyan, may free trade pa rin. Kung dadala mo from 1946 to the present, may free trade. So anong naging karanasan ng mga tao nung panahon ng Amerikano sa free trade at ano naman ang naging kasalukuyan? Kung titingnan naman natin, wala namang gaano pinagkaiba. So siguro yun lang masasabi ko, Professor Hill.
Okay, salamat po Doc Joey. Any last words po, Doc Joey, bago natin igawad sa inyo ang munting sertipiko ng pagkilala namin bilang
so para
namin sa umagang ito.
Sa Cavite State University, pinasasalamatan ko at kayo ay aking pinapupurihan dahil sa inyong pagtataguyod ng isang webinar tungkol sa ibang mukha ika nga ng martial law. At sa mga kabataan, patuloy na magbasa, intindihin ang kasaysayan at makita kung anong implikasyon nito para sa kasalukuyan. Maraming salamat po.
Ayan. Hindi ko na po ipa-plus yung certificate.
Okay lang. Oo, okay
Ayun,
lang.
pwede pala, pwede.
Oo, okay.
Okay, hindi. Ito po, Doc Joey,
Ayan,
babasahin ko na lang po
sige,
yung
oo.
nilalaman. Ano po?
Okay.
So, Republic of the Philippines, Cavite State University, Quincentennial Committee, and Cavite State University, Tansa. Certificate of Recognition is awarded to Dr. Jose Victor Jimenez in grateful acknowledgement of his distinguished and invaluable participation as resource speaker during the Cavite State University second monthly webinar series with the theme Ang Batas Militar noong 1972, iba pang kwento sa likod nito, in celebration of Quincentennial Commemoration in the Philippines with the topic The State Patronage of the Musical Arts in the New Society. Given this 24th day of September 2021, supposedly signed by our very own President, President Dr. Hernando D. Robles, President siyempre ng Cavite State University. Pasalubungan po natin ang masugabong virtual na palakpakan ng ating naunang tagapanayam. And Doc Joey, napakalaking karangalan po talaga sa Cavite State University na paunlakan ninyo ang aming paanyaya. And hopefully in the near future ay makabahagi po namin kayo. Anyway, ang webinar naman po namin ay August to December 2021 at buong singkad po ng 2022. Kaya inasahan din po namin na ang Dr. Hila. Si Dr. Omel po ay nakalinya din po sa amin sa buwan ng Nobyembre naman. Muli po, Doc Joey, napakaraming salamat po. Napakaraming salamat mula sa Cavite State.
Professor Hil Ramos. Maraming salamat din. Okay.
At doon po pala sa mga katanungan, ng iba nating mga nag-share ng kanilang mga tanong, of course, yan po ay aming ipararating at usapan naman po namin yan ng Doc Joey. Yung nasa akin naman po yung kanyang email address. Ay ipararating po natin sa Dr. Jimenez yung mga katanungan na hindi po natin nabasa ngayong umaga nito. So muli po, napakaraming salamat.
Salamat po.
Aha, napakalalim na talakayan, no? At ito, excited na din po ako sa susunod nating tagapagsalita, no? At bilang pagpapakilala po, noon pong August 18, 2021, ako po ay nakabasa ng isang artikulo sa isang dyaryo, actually sa Manila Standard po ito. Sinulat po ito ng kanilang business columnist, so sa business class po ito nakalagay. At ako yung naging curious po doon sa nabasa ko. Kasi nakalagay po doon, of course yung title niya ay Managing the Philippine Economy 1973 to 1983. So medyo may kiliti po ng konti. Sinundan ko po yung mga talata. At nabasa ko doon sa una, nakalagay, inilagay nung author si Sir Rudy Romero, nakalagay doon, these men serve their country, not Marcos. So ikaw, ano kaya yun? Ano ibig sabihin nun? Sinundan ko po yung iba pang talata. So nakalagay po doon, the small group of men who managed the Philippine economy during the decade 73 to 83 arguably was the best economic management team in the history of Philippine economy during the last 4 decades. So lalo po ako naging curious. Tapos pinakilala niya, sabi niya doon, the group was composed of Cesar E.A. Birata, mechanical engineer, former dean of the UP College of Business Administration, Vicente Paterno, a mechanical engineer also, Harvard Business School, former Meralco president, Jaime Laya, isa pong CPA, Stanford University PhD, Gerardo Sicat, economist, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, PhD, Placido Mapa Jr., isa ring ekonomista, Harvard University, Arturo Tanco Jr., management consultant, Ateneo de Manila University, and Alfredo Wino Jr., engineer, former UP College of Engineering din. Tapos sa baba, doon po sa artikulo, may inilagay siyang quotation. I considered it my duty to really serve our country. And that was the only thing that kept me going. Doon ko po gustong simulan ang pagpapakilala sa ating pangalawang tagapanayam. Sabi nga po ni Mr. Rudy Romero, gaya ng binanggit sa itaas, these men serve their country, not Marcos. At sa pagtatapos, pinagtibay naman ng ating panahing tagapagsalita sa kanyang sinabi, I considered it my duty to really serve our country, and that was the only thing that kept me going. Pangunahin, pinagmamalaki ko pong banggitin na ang ating sunod na kapanayam ay taga Cavite State University din. At siya po ay isang alumnus ng ating pamantasan. Pinagkalooban natin siya ng degreeng Doctor of Humanities honoris causa noong taong 2010. Ang ating pong sunod na tagapanayam ay mula sa angkan ng mga bayani. Siya ay pinanganak noong Disyembre 12, 1930 bilang panganay sa magkakapatid. Ang kanyang mga magulang ay sina Dr. Enrique Topacio Birata ng Medisyon Imus at Leonor Reyes Aguinaldo ng Binakayan, Kawit, anak ng General Baldomero Aguinaldo. Nanirahan sila sa Binakayan sa bahay na itinayo ng General Baldomero noong 1906 at 1907 at sa kasalukuyan, ang bahay na dati nilang tinitirhan ay kilala at tanyag na dambanang Baldomero Aguinaldo. Incidentally, minana na po ito ng ating tagapagsalitang sunod sa kanyang ina noong 1981. At incidentally, kanya po itong ipinagkaloob bilang isang donasyon sa National Historical Institute. Kaya nga po naging dambana ng General Baldomero Aguinaldo. Kagaya ng mga sinaunang karanasan, sa bahay din ang kanyang unang edukasyon. Ngunit noong 1937, nagpatala siya sa unang baitang sa Medisyon Primary School. Pagkatapos ng ika-4 na baitang, noong 1940, lumipat siya sa UP Elementary School sa Maynila, kung saan nagtapos siya ng ika-6 na baitang noong Disyembre 8, 1941. Sa pagbubukas ng Imus Institute noong Abril ng 1942, pumasok siya dito kung saan inabutan ang kanyang ikalawang taon ng pagsiklab ng ikalawang digmaang pandaigdig. Incidentally, nung nakapanayam ko po ang butihing Prime Minister, nabanggit niya na dalawa yung pinamimilian niyang papasukan sana niya ng high school. No? Doon nga po sa Imus Institute at sana nga po ay dito sa ating Cavite State University sa ngayon. So nung panahon po yun siguro Indang Farm School po ang pangalan pa. Pwede po ako magkamali doon. Yan. Sa muling pagbubukas ng mga paaralan noong 1945, sa maiksi at pinabilis na kurso sa mataas na paaralan, kanyang tinapos ang ikalawa at ikatlong taon noong 1946 at pagkatapos ay lumipat sa UP High School sa Maynila kung saan siya ay nagtapos ng mataas na paaralan noong 1947. Sa Universidad ng Pilipinas, kanyang tinapos ang kursong BS in Mechanical Engineering at BS in Business Administration bilang isang cum laude. Nagturo siya sa kolehiyo. Sorry po, nawala po ako. Nang matalagang pansamantalang Pangulo ng UP ang kanyang ama, nagbitiw siya sa pagtuturo at naging kawani ng SGP, Sisip Gores at Bilayo Management Services Division. Kasabay nito, itinalaga siyang dekano ng Kolehiyo ng Business Administration ng UP noong 1960 hanggang 1967. Tinalaga siya ng dating Pangulong Marcos bilang Deputy Director General for Investments sa Presidential Economic Staff ng gobyerno. Kasunod nito, naging tagapamuno siya ng Board of Investments, Undersecretary for Industry at Chairman ng Philippine National Bank. Pebrero ng 1970, tinalaga siya bilang kalihim ng Finance at noong 1981 bilang punong ministro hanggang noong taong 1986. 1984 na magsilbi siyang kinatawan ng Cavite sa nabuwag na Batasang Pambansa at naging miyembro din siya ng Provincial Development Council. Noong 1956, naging kabiyak at kanyang may bahay sa Binibining Pilita Joy Gambo. Siya ay nabayaan ng 3 supling. Sa kasalukuyan, sina lolo at lola ay mayroong 4 na apo at 1 apo na sa tuhod. At noong 2010 po, gaya nabanggit ko kanina, sa ilalim ng pamumuno ng dating Pangulo Roberto Sanggalang bilang pagkilala sa makabuluhang gawain, hindi lamang para sa lalawigan ng Cavite, kundi pati na rin sa buong bansa, Ginawaran siya ng Cavite State University ng Doctor of Humanities honoris causa. Kaya sabi nga po kanina, taga-Kabso din si Prime Minister. Alam kong sabik na kayong madinig ang kwento tungkol sa ekonomiya ng bansa simula 1973 to 1983, galing mismo at kwento sang-ayon sa karanasan ng isang nakasaksi at nakaranas dito. Sa atin, sa mga mag-aaral ng kasaysayan, although wala naman tayong history major, sabi nga natin, primary source. Ika nga, no? Ika nga nating mga garal ng kasaysayan sa historiografiya. Kaya't heto na ang ating ikalawang tagapanayang, apo ng General Emilio at Baldomero Aguinaldo. Walang iba kundi ang dating punong ministro ng bansa. Sa kasalukuyan ay ang aming chairman ng Cavite Historical Society, taga Cavite State University. Isang mainit na pagtanggap, pasalubungan natin ang masigabong virtual na palakpakan ang ating pong pinagmamalaki, dating punong ministro, Cesar Enrique Aguinaldo Berata. Sir Wilbert, yung kanyang slides, please. Share screen po yung kay Prime Minister na. Pakipalaki ng kaunti. Pakipalaki ng kaunti. Muli po, binibigay ko po sa inyo ang ating dating Pangulo at Prime Minister, former Prime Minister Berata, sa kanyang papel na socio-economic plans and programs noong panahon ng Batas Militar 1972 to 1981. Welcome po, Prime Minister.
Sir, nakamute po ata kayo.
Prime, naka-mute po yata kayo, sir.
Kuwan ba?
Ayan, sir.
Kuwan na?
Dinig na po, sir. Dinig
Ayos
na po. Opo, loud and clear na po.
Na-mute niya ulit po.
Sir, naka-mute po ulit. Naka-mute po ulit kayo. Ayan po. Okay na po.
Okay na?
Opo, sir. Okay na po.
Okay na?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay na po.
Kaya, ibig ko lang batiin kayo ng lahat at ako'y napapasalamat sa inyong panyaya dito sa webinar na ito. Hanggang anong oras ba tayo?
Sir, okay lang po na mag-extend. Bagamat sa ating pong schedule ay hanggang alas 12, pero napag-usapan naman namin po yun. Pwede pong mag-extend ng mga ilang minuto pa. Diretso lang po, okay. Sir. Okay lang po yun.
Okay, kasi sige, dadali-dalihan ko na lamang itong aking presentation na ang una kong ibig ipakita sa inyo ay yung background highlights noong 1971-72. Mari bang ipakita yon?
Sir Wilbert, next.
Yung second page.
Next slide, please, Sir Wilbert.
Next slide, please.
Ayan po.
Yeah, ibig kong ipaalam sa inyo na ang populasyon natin noon ay 37 million and the growth rate is 3.2%. Napakataas noon. Ngayon siguro mga 1.9 na lamang. Yung 3.2%, that means that the population will double in 22 years. And usually, 1/4 o ika-4 ng ating populasyon ay nasa eskwelahan. Kaya ngayon na umaabot na ng 27 million ang nasa eskwela sapagkat ang ating population ay about 110 million. And noon, marami pang taong nagsasaka. Kaya ang employment ay mas mataas. Ngayon ay kukonti-konti ang nagsasaka. Marami ay nasa services. Ibig ko rin sabihin na yung budget noong 1971, nung ako'y naging kalihim ng pananalapi, ay 4 billion pesos lamang. That is for 1971. And 3 billion ay ginagamit para sa sweldo, maintenance expenses, and ordinary expenses, including some for debt payment. And 1 billion para sa infrastructure. Yung infrastructure, ginagastos yun sa pagpapagawa ng eskwela, karsada, at irrigation lamang. Sapagkat ang ibig pong sabihin ng 4 billion budget sa bawat tao noon, 110 piso lamang sa isang taon ang nilalaan ng budget. Paano tayo magkakaroon ng progresong ekonomiya kung ang budget ay napakaliit? Ang exchange rate, ang palitan po ng peso to dollar in 1971 was 6 pesos and 45 centavos to $1. Ngayon ay 50 piso sa $1. And hinahamok ko nga ang mga kongresista, mga senador, na kung pwedeng magpasa sila ng tax measures kasi para lumaki ang budget at magkaroon ng mas malaking allocation ng infrastructure. Pirming ayaw nila kasi sinasabi nila na yan ayaw nila sa politika. Hindi ko naman po maaaring basta maupo na lamang at mag-intay ng galaw ng ating kongreso. Kaya ang ginawa ko po ay nagpunta ako sa World Bank. At sabi ko pwede bang tulungan nyo kami para sa financing ng mga project sa programa at infrastructure. Magtayo tayo ng isang grupo, tinatawag naming consultative group ng mga ibang bansa at ibang organisasyon para tulungan ang Pilipinas. Sa loob-loob ko, kung ang mga banyagang ang ibang bansa ay pumapayag tulungan ng Pilipinas, siguro hindi na matatanggihan ng ating Kongreso na magpasa sila ng mga tax measures para doon sa kinakailangang tinatawag na counterpart funds o yung some peso expenditure sa bawat infrastructure. Kaya yun po ang naging taktika ko. At noon din, 1971, doon po nag-umpisa ang Constitutional Convention. 3 delegado ang galing sa Cavite At ang lakad noon sa tungkol sa konbensyon ay pagbabago ng US presidential system, which is yun ngayon ang umiiral sa atin to a parliamentary system. Yung pong ipinasa ng Constitutional Convention ay hawig sa Inglaterra or maybe sa nalalapit, parang medyo nahihilig din sa Singapore. Napakarami pong bansa na parliamentary systems. Ilan-ilan po ang bansang katulad ng Amerika. Noong pong panahong yon, sapagkat merong nadiskubre ang Rice Research Institute sa Los Baños, yung tinatawag na IR8 variety ng palay, na marami tayong inani, sapagkat tinulungan natin ang mga magsasaka, binigyan natin ng pataba, binigyan natin ng pautang. Noon wala pang agrarian reform, at lumaki ang ating ani. Kaya nagkaroon tayo ng rice export sa 2 taon. Talagang na-break po ang record natin sapagkat halos taon-taon. Miski na po noong panahon pa ng Kastila, pirmi tayong umaangkat ng bigas. Pero na-break yung record na yon. Ngunit hindi nagtagal sa dami ng tao, and then sabi ng mga Pilipino, medyo ayaw nila ng lasa ng IR8, sapagkat yung pong IR8 ay mas mataas ang protein content. Medyo maya pa raw, kaya ayaw nila yung IR8. At humanap na naman ng bagong palay, at gustuhan nila yung, I think, yung ginawa ng UP Los Baños na C4, C5. Ang emphasis noong panahong yon ay magkaroon ng maraming investments para mag-invest ang mga Pilipino at mga foreigner dito sa atin, sapagkat pag maraming investments, mas mataas ang employment. And kinakailangan din natin magkaroon ng export drive kasi hindi maaari yung puro angkat na lamang Wala naman tayong dollars na kinikita na sasapat para sa ating inaangkat. Kaya kinakailangan natin ng export. Bukod sa niyog, sa asukal, sa abaka, at ang napakasama, at yun ay pinatigil na, yung logging, yung pagputol ng mga troso sa ating mga bundok, sapagkat napakasama ng epekto sa baha at pag mga landslide. At napakabagal po ang Kongreso. Katulad po noong isang batas na ipinasok namin noong 1969 tungkol sa exploration ng oil and gas. 1972 hindi pa pinapasa. Kailangan natin ang oil and gas sapagkat ang electric energy natin, ang transportasyon, lahat ay nangangailangan ng langis. Kaya noon po 95% ang kailangan nating langis para magkaroon ng iba't ibang klaseng energy, electric energy, for transportation, at sa iba pa. Ang 5% po ay sa hydroelectric. Meron tayong ilang hydroelectric na katulad sa Ambuklaw o sa Binga. Ito po ay malapit sa Baguio. Ibig ko rin masabi sa inyo kung ano ang peace and order situation noong 1971 and 72. Una, yung tinatawag na Plaza Miranda bombing ng Agosto 21 ng 1971 na nagmi-meeting ang mga politiko na binomba at si Ninoy Aquino, siyang Secretary General ng ng kanilang partido, hindi nagpunta roon. Kaya hindi siya tinamaan ng mga shrapnel or meron pang namatay. Kaya sapagkat meron siyang alam na merong bobomba noon. Meron pa rin tayong isang barko, tinatawag nating karagatan, na galing sa China, sa Hainan, na may dalang almas na para itulong sa mga NPA. Kasi noong pong panahon na yon, ang mga NPA at ang mga komunistang kasapi sa komunista sinusundan yung ginawa ni Mao, Chairman Mao, na kinakailangan na magkaroon ng isang civil war among the people in order to dislodge, in order to para mapalitan ng gobyerno. Yung pong mga may hilig ng maging komunista, no, yung pong matatanda natin na mas hilig sila sa sistema ng Rusya. Katulad po ni Nalaba, ni Baking, sila po ay following the Russian. But yung mga bago, mga bata, ay gusto nila si Mao. And ibig ko rin masabi na sa Mindanao naman, iba naman ang palakad ni na Suari. Gusto nilang humiwalay ang Mindanao at sila ay tinutulungan, for example, ng Libya at maybe iba pang bansa na gusto nilang makuha ang Palawan at ang buong Mindanao na humiwalay na sa Pilipinas at isasama nila ang parte ng Malaysia na magiging isang ibang bansa. At dito naman sa Bisaya, meron ding mga tropa ng NPA at meron ding naglalabang-laban na mga political leaders na marami ring almas. Kaya sila mismo ang na naglalaban-laban. Dito sa Luzon na marami ring NPA sa Sierra Madre, sa Norte, sa Bicol area. So medyo marami pong kaguluhan at yung first quarter 4 ng 1972, yun ang tinatawag nilang first quarter storm. Itong lahat ng mga lumalaban sa gobyerno ay nanggugulo. At yung katulad ng mga tungkol sa labor movements, gusto nila magkaroon ng maraming strike. Marami silang hinihingi na hindi maibigay naman ng mga factory. And nalaman din namin na binibigyan pala ng incentive from communist organizations. Pag naka-strike sila, maybe bibigyan sila ng isang ambulansya. Talagang hangaring itumba ang gobyerno sa maraming paraan. Noon po, umiiral pa rin ang Vietnam War. Yung Vietnam War ay hanggang 1975. Noong pong 1966, nagkaroon ng Seattle Summit. Ito po ay Southeast Asia Treaty Organization na magtutulong-tulong kung inatake ng komunista. Kaya po ang Amerika ay siyang namumuno rito. Nagpunta rito si President Johnson sa Manila na sinabi niya na si President Marcos ay imbitahan yung mga tiga Southeast Asia upang magkaroon ng summit dito sa Manila. And marami siyang hinihingi. Una, gusto niya na mga Pilipino ay lumaban sa North Vietnamese sa front line, katulad ng ginawa ng Thailand at Korea. Ngunit ayaw pumayag si Marcos sapagkat sabi niya delikado tayo makipaglaban sa Vietnam. Ang army natin at constabulary ay 130,000 lamang. Yung army ng North Vietnam ay umabot ng 2 milyon. At katulong pa nila ang Russia. Kaya bakit natin kakaawayin ang Vietnam? Kaya sabi ni Marcos, magpapadala tayo ng tulong sa Vietnam. Ngunit tutulungan namin yung mga refugees ng South Vietnam na hindi kami lalaban sa frontline. Pagkatapos yung Muslim countries, meron din silang organisasyon . So doon pirmi pumupunta si Missouri na humihingi ng tulong para dito sa secession. Kaya napakarami pong problema noon, and kaya napag-isipang ideklara ang martial law na ayon sa 1935 Constitution. Yung pong ibang bansa dito sa Asia, Southeast Asia, yung pong naging colonies ng Inglaterra, iba po ang kanilang batas. Meron silang Internal Security Act na pirming umiiral yung kanilang Internal Security Act. Hindi katulad nitong provision sa ating saligang batas na kinakailangan it is a major declaration that we will employ martial law and can be contested in the Supreme Court. So, yun po ang mga pangyayari noon na natuloy ang deklarasyon ng martial law noong Setyembre 21, 1972. Yung pong sinabi ko na sa inyo na yung pagbubuo ng consultative group, yun po ay nangyari sa Paris. Kasi gusto ng World Bank na sila ang magiging chairman, at sila ang aapila, sila ang magbibigay ng kondisyon dito sa atin. Ginagawa nila sa Paris sapagkat kung gagawin sa Washington, masyado silang piling tatawagin sa opisina. Samantalang kung sila ay pupunta sa kanilang opisina sa Paris, marami raw makakapunta ibang bansa doon. And ang aming ipinasok na unang programa ay tungkol sa agricultural development. And yung pong sumusunod na meeting ay yung second meeting ay tungkol naman sa infrastructure. And it included projects in energy, flood control, the LRT, and communication. So, noon po ay tuloy pa rin ang Constitutional Convention hanggang early 1973. And it was affirmed that yung paglipat natin into a parliamentary system. And noong nagproklasyon ng martial law, ang Kongreso ay sinara. Ang presidente bilang commander-in-chief or being presidente ay nag-issue na ng presidential decree in lieu of closure of Congress. He issued letters of instruction and general orders to the military. Then, ang nangyari, mayroong mga petisyon sa Supreme Court na kino-question ang proklamasyon ng martial law. Sabi nila, hindi ugma yan. So, sabi ng ibang miyembro ng gabinete, bakit pa natin pakikinggan yung mga kasong yan? Mabuti siguro magdeklara na lang tayo ng revolutionary government. Pati Supreme Court matatanggal. Sabi ni President Marcos, ayoko niyang yung suggestion niyo na magkaroon tayo ng revolutionary government sapagkat ayon sa ating saligang batas, ang civilian ang merong authority over the military. Kung alisin natin ang konstitusyon, alam niyo ba kung ano ang gagawin ng military sa atin? Walang makasagot. Kaya sabi ni President Marcos, tinawag niya si Solicitor General Estelito Mendoza na pwede kayang maidepensa mo itong ginawang deklarasyon ng martial law. Sabi niya, malamang po, Pangulo, na ating sasabihin na ito ay political act sapagkat maraming kaguluhan. So, hindi pwedeng husgahan ng korte sapagkat ito ay political act. Nanalo po yung depensang yon. Kaya natuloy ang martial law na hanggang 1981. Maraming nagsasabi na ang martial law ay 19 na taon. Hindi po tama yon. Ang isang matagal na martial law po ay sa Taiwan. Umabot ng 39 years. Kasi noong habang buhay si Chiang Kai-shek ay martial law. And then, of course, because of martial law, yung mga katunggali ni Marcos sa politika at saka yung mga anti-Marcos moves or anti-Marcos government moves, inaresto ng militar. And then nagkaroon na ng reorganization ng gobyerno ayon sa bagong konstitusyon, yung 1983 Constitution. Noon namang 1973, ito namang OPEC, ito po ay organization ng petroleum exporting countries, OPEC. Nagsama-sama sila, lahat ng mga, diyan po ay napasama ang Indonesia, sapagkat sila exporting. Noong araw diyan tayo kumukuha ng langis. Pero noon, nagmahal ang presyo nila at nagustuhan ng Hapon ang langis na galing Indonesia. Tayo ay lumipat sa Middle East na mura-mura. Ngunit hindi mas mataas ang quality ng crudo galing sa Middle East. Kaya noon po ay pangkaraniwan na binibili natin ng maybe $1.70 to $2 per barrel. Noong before 1973 yung langis bigla pong naging $7 agad. Sa susunod na taon naging $9. Then, sunod-sunod na pagtaas, $11, $14, $19. Alam niyo sa kalaunan na ang halaga po ng krudo sa atin noong mga 1982, 83, umabot na po ng $36 per barrel. Napakataas na po. Pagkatapos, sa galit sa atin ng mga Muslim countries na oil exporting, binawasan yung binibili natin ng 25%. 25%. 25%. Kaya kinakailangan magrasyon at kinakailangan nating magbago ng energy resources. Kaya yung pong sabi namin, ang mabuti ay lumipat tayo sa coal, hindi coal yun. Geothermal, hydro, at saka some of the agricultural wastes, for example, mga sugarcane bagas, some are wood, like planting fast-growing ipil-ipil. And then we made use of alcohol, tinatawag nating alcogas. Hanggang ngayon, meron pa rin alcogas. At yun namang diesel, yung coconut oil and diesel. So, sinabi namin lahat ng katulad ng mga gumagawa ng simento, huwag na silang gumamit ng langis kung hindi lumipat sila sa coal, because napakalaki po ng coal supply at malapit dito sa atin. Ako po ay nagtawag. Tinawagan ko ang Amerika kung pwedeng makakuha tayo sa kanilang Alaskan oil. Sabi ng Amerika, hindi namin pinagbibilian. Tumawag kami sa Mexico sapagkat yung Gulf of Mexico, maraming mga oil companies doon. Binigyan tayo ng konti sapagkat yun nalalaan din sa pangkaraniwan sa Amerika. Nabigyan tayo ng China yung kanilang konting binigay sa atin ng medyo mura-mura, pero hindi masyadong mabuti yung kanilang crudo, ngunit sa kawalan ng ibang pinanggagalingan, naari na rin. Pagkatapos, yung geothermal, natulungan naman tayo ng malaki ang tulong sa atin ng New Zealand. Kasi meron din silang geothermal. Kaya tinulungan yung they gave us $10 million grant money. And
Nakapigyan mo ng pagkain isda.
Yun ang pinanggalingan ng development ng Leyte Geothermal at Negros Oriental Geothermal. At yung World Bank naman na ayaw na mag-finance ng hydro sapagkat sabi nila mas mura yung magtayo ng oil-fired power plants, electric power plants katulad ng sa sukat. Bakit kayo mag-hydro? Napakatagal noon. Karaniwan 4 na taon. At ako minsan kalahating taon lamang yung hydro natin sapagkat pag tag-araw, hindi natin walang ulan. Kaya hindi mapuno yung prinsa. Pagkatapos nitong paghihirap natin sa langis, ito naman mga OPEC countries na punong-puno ng pera nilang kinikita sa pagmamahal ng halaga ng langis, dineposito nila sa mga bangko sa Europe at saka sa Amerika. So itong mga bangko na punong-puno ng mga deposito ngayon ng mga Middle East, sabi nila ayaw na namin magpautang ng maliliit sapagkat international lending, siguro every lending you need 2 inches of documentation sa kapal, sa daming kondisyon. Kaya sabi nila, ang gusto namin na yung pag magpapautang kami ay kinakailangan may garantiya ng gobyerno. Kaya ang sabi po ng Central Bank ng Pilipinas ano magagawa natin? Kinakailangan na garantiyahan natin. Kaya naggarantiya po ang PNB, ang DBP, at ang Central Bank. Kaya biglang tumaas po ang pangungutang ng gobyerno sapagkat kinakailangan ng private sector na matuloy yung kanilang mga inaangkat na mga makinarya, raw materials, computers, lahat na. Yung pambayad din sa langis. Kaya nangyari po sa kamahalan ng langis, mataas po ang inflation. Karaniwan ng mga bansa ay tumaas na lahat ng inflation. And ang isang mataas na inflation also ay ang Amerika sapagkat bukod sa pagtaas ng presyo ng langis, ngunit meron din silang internal source gawa po ng kanilang ginagastos sa Vietnam na puro utang ng gobyerno. Utang ng gobyerno. Kaya ang inflation nila ay tumaas ng tumaas. And then, ang ginawa po ng Amerika, iniwanan nila ang US gold standard. Noon yung dollar, nakalagay doon mari mong ipagpalit sa ginto. binitawan nila yun. Inalis na nila yung linkage na yun. And then, itinaas nila yung interest rate sa US. Mantak nyo, pangkaraniwan umuutang tayo ng 5, 6, 7% Naging 22%. 22%, kaya bago makarating dito sa atin naging 25%. Kaya yung pong kahirapan natin sa langis at kahirapan natin sa Amerika, marami pong mga developing countries na katulad natin na nag-umpisang mag-default in 1982. And una dyan, katulad ng Mexico, marami sa Latin America, Argentina, Brazil, Ecuador, Chile, lahat po, default sila noong 1982. Noong pong nilakad ko na kinakailangan natin ng tulong at restructuring, ayaw pumayag naman itong mga bangko. Ang sabi nila kami bahala sa inyo, pero gagawin natin yan noong 1983, pagkatapos ng World Bank meeting sa Washington. Ang kasamaan noon, noong 1983, noong Agosto 21, 1983, itong pag-uwi ni Marcial Bonifacio, si Ninoy Aquino, binaril siya, pinatay siya tungkol doon sa isa pang sinasabing komunista. Kaya lalong humirap ang kondisyon ng Pilipinas. And ibig kong masabi sa inyo na napakaraming proyekto na nagawa noon, katulad ng electrification, pagbubuo ng National Electrification Administration, katulad ng pagpapagawa ng mga pantalan, yung ginawa ng Philippine Ports Authority, PPA. Yun ang mga tungkol sa water supply para sa inumin. Local Water Utilities Administration. Yan po ay lahat galing sa tulong na mga ibang bansa at organisasyon. Yung pong Agus hydropower plants sa Maria Cristina. Karaniwan ang alam nyo yung Maria Cristina. Pulangi River in Mindanao. Yan. Mga puro electric power yan. And then we went into the Batas nuclear power plant. Yan US Exim Bank, sapagkat naisip namin noon na para tayo ay makapagsarili, kinakailangan magkaroon tayo ng nuclear power plant. And hanggang ngayon, kailangan natin yan. At marami, katulad ng Korea, katulad ng Hapon, katulad ng Taiwan, at ginagawa ng China ay puro nuclear power plant. Yung pang Philippine-Japan Friendship Highway, yung buhat sa Aparia hanggang Davao. Yan eh. And then, marami pong mga ginawa natin ang Pantabangan Dam, isang malaking irrigation project, flood control project, and pagkatapos ng Pantabangan na yung Magat, Kaleraya, Chico, pero yung Chico, hindi kami natuloy sapagkat pirming hinaharang ng mga tao doon na gustong pumatay or patayin ang mga magtatrabaho doon. Yung Kaliraya, tinulungan tayo ng mga Italiano. Hanggang ngayon po, umuubra yan. Kaya, marami doon sa ating mga kontraktor na natutong magpagawa ng iba-iba, ng electrification, ports, water supply, roads and bridges. Yan po nag-umpisa ang ating OFW sapagkat yung mga kontratista pagkatapos nilang matapos ang karsada o building o ospital, kinakailangan naman maintenance. So, and then, yung mga nurses natin, mga hotels, yung mga katulong. Kaya, diyan po nag-umpisa ang ating OFW. Kami naman mga kabinete, mga kalihim, ang aming trabaho, siguro maraming mga yung revision ng codes and laws. Sapagkat nasabi ko na nga sa inyo na napakabagal ng Kongreso. Kinakailangan natin to modernize and update the laws. And the President said that we cannot keep on with martial law without a Congress or tinawag niyang batasan. Kaya prepara noong 1976 bubuksan ang batasan, ang interim batasan noong 1978 hanggang 1984. And then the regular batasan from 1984 1990 sana. Marami pa rin mga ibang programa sa education, yung pagtuturo sa ating mga yung ginagamit nating salita hanggang grade 3 sapagkat ang importante po ay magkaroon kaagad ng ibang kaisipan imbis na turuan ng isang bata ng English. Yun po ay on rekomendasyon ni Dr. Aguilar, isang superintendent and educator ng Iloilo. Ang health, ginawa namin yung hospital build-up. Maraming hospital na naitayo, health centers. Tsaka namili po tayo ng mga equipment for the provincial hospital sapagkat Ang nangyayari po ay pirmi na lamang dinadala sa major centers samantalang meron namang mga provincial hospitals na kulang lang sa equipment. Kinakailangan lagyan ng mga tugmang doktor. And then tungkol sa food security, kaya nagkaroon tayo ng National NFA. And then inaalagaan natin ang pagkain ng mga bata sapagkat napaka-importante yung pagkain ng mga batang-bata Kasi yung kanilang utak hindi maayos ang development pag hindi sila kumain ng gusto. And then family planning para pabawasan ang population growth. And then skills training. Kaya yung TESDA ay nabuo. And then yung pong sinasabi ko na sa inyo na environmental concern, yung ban on logging. And then in 1977, yung pong tourism. And we decided to construct the PICC because we thought that business tourism should be emphasized to encourage investments by having the international meetings in the Philippines. We have a natural advantage speaking English, and the only other convention center was in India. So we could be a good competitor, but alam nyo na, sa galit ng ibang sector, imagine noong nag-meeting ang American Travel and Tourist Association dito sa atin, sa PICC, nagpaputok ng bomba sa loob. Kaya buhat noon, nawala ng ganang pumunta ang mga iba na gumamit ng talagang hindi mo malaman kung ano ang gusto ng mga nangangaliwa or kung bakit ganoon. And then nagkaroon din tayo ng tinatawag na Cuban crisis, yung medyo nagsubukan ng Amerika at saka Russia sa Cuba. Nangyari po noon nagkaroon ng benepisyo sa atin sapagkat pinutol ng Amerika yung Cuban sugar import nila at ipinasa sa atin. Kaya tumaas yung ating maraming sugar mills po na itayo. And then we still have good mining din, nickel mining hanggang ngayon, and about copper. So marami na akong sabi sa inyo dito sa atin, sa Cavite. Ang una-una naming ginawa ay yung dredging ng mga prinsa, katulad ng Molino, sa General Trias. Yung mga prinsa dyan bumababaw na. Kaya kukonti na lamang ang tubig. And then the roads and bridges of well, naumpisahan na yung Governor's Drive. Pero yung maraming daan sa Cavite, kita niyo naman na ang husay ng daan natin. Kung pumunta kayo sa ibang lalawigan, hindi ganyan. Marami ay putol-putol. And ang pinakamalaking tulong sa Cavite ay yung pagpapagawa ng coastal road. Noon tayo pinasok ng mga investments at saka maraming housing project. And then, noong inimbitahan natin ang sinabi kong kinakailangan na idugtong tayo ng national power ang Cavite electrical system. Kaya yung ipinasok nila sa Dasmariñas. Katapos nilakad natin sa Meralco na pasukin nila at ang kuryente. Nilakad din natin ng PLDT, ang pagpapatayo ng SEPSA sa Rosario. And then the water supply along the coastal because umaalat na yung mga poso, hindi na po pwedeng inumin. And DPWH established the different levels of kaya yung mga nagpasukan na sa dami na ng tao sa atin sa dami ng tao, kaya napakarami na pong malls na itayo sa Cavite. So palagay ko marami na akong naibalita sa inyo na mga ginawa namin. Kaya ibig ko rin pong ibahagi sa inyo na nagkaroon kami ng dialogue ng mga economic managers of the Marcos administration na pinablish ng National Historical Commission. Ito po ay pinadala ko ang isang kopya kay Professor Gil Ramos. Ito po ay pinagbibili ng National Historical Commission. And ito yung nabanggit ni Rudy Romero kasi pinadalan ko siya ng isang kopya nito at nabasa niya ang laman ng mga ginawa namin noong umiiral ang batas sa militar. Kami po ay walang kinalaman doon sa pagpamalakad ng batas militar. Yun po ay trabaho ni Secretary Ponce Enrile, Palihim Ponce Enrile at ni Fidel Ramos. Sila po ang administrator ng martial law. Kami on the economic side and minsan nga ang sabi-sabi ng mga militar, mabuti siguro i-design namin kayo bigyan namin kayo ng uniforme. Lahat ng mga kalihim merong nakalagay na birata, kalihim ng pananalapi, katulad ng army. Sabi ni President Marcos, hindi po pwede yan. The civilian is superior to the military. Huwag kayong papayag na. At kung binibigyan ko yun ng honors ng military, kung bibisitahin niyo sila, tanggapin ninyo. Ipakita nyo na ang civilian ay pirming namumuno sa militar. Kaya yan po ang masasabi ko ngayon. At kung meron kayong mga marami kayong tanong, meron pa tayong konting panahon para masagot ko. Marami pong salamat sa pagkakataong ito. At it was isang madaling panayam tungkol sa aming mga ginawa.
Ayan, napakaraming salamat po, Prime Minister. At talagang napakalaking bagay sa amin, lalo na yung mga kabataan natin na hindi naman kasi nung nakabasa ng ibang alternatibong babasahin. At sabi nga natin, eye-opener yung isinyer ng ating Prime Minister. Kahit ako mismo, na binanggit ko nga kanina, Marcelo baby ako, but the thing is, syempre, iba yung mga nababasa ko. Iba yung nababasa din ng iba. Although with due respect naman sa lahat. At yun nga ang punto natin sa ating pa-webinar na democratic tayo. So magandang madinig natin ang magkabilang bahagi. At nakita nyo naman na dito sa ating pa-webinar, wala naman tayong tinutumbok dito, walang paninira whatsoever. No? Very independent ang pananaw ng ating mga tagapanayam. Ang kagandahan nga lamang noon, nabibigyan tayo ng ibang perspektibo, ng ibang pananaw. And how I wish, sabi ko nga, kahit kalahating araw ay makapanayam natin ng Prime Minister. Talagang napakarami. At kami siguro sa Cavite Historical Society, maswerte kami. No, maswerte kami kasi nga ay, bilang chairman namin ng Cavite Historical, yan, ganyan ang estilo ng Prime Minister. Marami siyang kwento sa aming pagpulong. Actually, may mga recorded na mga kwentohang ganyan, kagaya na ganap sa amin sa Cobilanja before. Talagang I treasure it very much. Tapos, so siguro kung may mga katanungan ng iba sa atin, okay pa naman, may oras pa naman tayo, ay andyan ulit ang ating moderator, si Professor Jong Bagay. At sabi ko nga ay sa mga guro at mga mag-aaral na nandito sa ating webinar room na ito, palagay ko mas magandang ituloy ang diskusyon, ituloy ang talakayan sa ating classroom. No, anyway, isang malayang talakayan between the students and the professor, the instructor, na tungkol dito, na yun ang punto natin, isang malayang talakayan na walang mainit ang pagtatalo, malamig ang mga ulo, hindi pinipilit ang sariling side. So isang palagay ko ay kayang-kaya naman natin ganapin yun sa isang classroom setup. Yung nga lang problema natin, malayo pa yung face to face, no? So muli po, Prime Minister, ay salamat po at
maraming salamat sa pagkakataong ito.
Opo, siguro po may mga katanungan yung ating mga nanonood, ay andito po si Professor Jong Bagay. Sir Jong, take it away.
Okay, basahin ko lang po yung isang tanong na ngayon na pa nakarating sa akin. Prime Minister, maaari po ba kayong magbigay ng ilang datos sa macroeconomic aspect ng bansa noong rehimeng Marcos. Maaari po ito tumutukoy dun sa employment, prices of commodities. Dahil medyo kapansin-pansin po na ang inyo pong mga tinalakay ngayong umaga ay tumutumbok po sa microeconomic. So, maaari po ba kayo magbigay ng ilang datos sa macroeconomic aspect?
Yeah. Well, sinabi ko na nga na ang nangyayari sa atin ay pataas ng pataas ang presyo ng langis. Pag tumataas ang presyo ng langis, tumataas din ang ating exchange rate. Noong mga 19 na siguro 81 or 82, the exchange rate was 22-1. Kaya yung presyo ng inaangkat natin talagang tumataas. So, ang presyo ng mga ginagawa natin tumataas din. And then we were able to at a certain time we were able to reach a growth rate in GDP of 10%. Wala pang nakakatalo noon sapagkat yung mga project natin na ginagawa na meron tulong ang foreign sector at saka yung nangyari sa Cuba na kinakailangan marami tayong sugar central at tumaas ang export natin. Noong pong panahon na yun tumaas ang growth rate. Pero noong mga 1983 na bumagsak po ang growth rate sapagkat ito hindi na martial law to kasi hanggang 1981 lamang kasi nangyari noong we declared that we are going to negotiate with the 485 bankers, negotiate for restructuring and asking for new money, new working capital. Naghigpit na katakot-takot ang World Bank, ang IMF at ang ADB na itigil muna ang lahat ng mga ibang project. Kaya meron tayong halos 2 taon na bumagsak ang ekonomiya. Kasi noong 1985, noon lang kami nagkatapos ng pirmahan with the 485 banks that we negotiated with all over the world. Napakalaking trabaho noon na ang presyo medyo mataas. Kung gusto nyo yung statistics na yon na hindi ko na kinuha yung mga detalyang yon sapagkat kung makukuha natin ang statistics ng kung ano ang price levels noon. Kasi sa central bank, yan ang kanilang trabaho. Meron pa bang ibang tanong?
Prime, meron po ditong isang sumingit na tanong. Parang ito po yung kanyang tanong. Maari po bang mai-restore ang mga development na naipatupad noong panahon ni Marcos? Dahil base po sa mga nababasa po namin, ay maganda naman ang naging dulot niya sa pagpapaunlad ng ating bansa.
Ang gusto ko sanang ma-restore itong Bataan Nuclear Power Plant. Sapagkat yung action ni President Cory Aquino na sabi niya, yung kumakampanya pa lamang siya, hindi natin patatakbuhin yan. Noong 1986, it was supposed to be operational. Yan pinakinabangan ng husto ng Korea because the same brand, the same capacity was put up in Korea by Korean electric company, and it has been operating for about 33 years without any problem. Tayo, we have the nuclear power plant. Walang pakinabang. Yan buong-buo pa kasi iningatan. And nakita nyo na ipagbabawal na rin ang coal plants. Sabi nila, papalitan niya ng liquefied natural gas. Pero fossil fuel din yan. Langis din yan. Yan ang pinagbabawal. Kaya hindi naman po pwede na solar at wind power ang aasahan natin sapagkat mabuti nga kung ang araw umabot ng usually ang availability ng electric power from solar is only around 17%. Kasi merong ulap, merong ulan, may bagyo, may gabi, yung pagdating ng hapon or umaga-umaga, hindi na mamuobra yun. Paano mong masasabing magagamit yan ng isang pagawaan kung hindi pirming na andyan yung kuryente? Ganoon din ang sa wind power. Pag may hangin, iikot yung propeller. Pero hindi mo naman maaasahan pirming gano'n ang hangin. Kaya yung sinasabi nila puro renewable, kinakailangan na isipin muna nila na kung ano kinakailangan ng mga pagawaan at ano kinakailangan ng mga tao, ano kinakailangan ng commercial. Kaya yan ang ating sana ang hindi na lamang katulad nitong yung Kaliwa Dam. yung Kaliwa Dam na uumpisahan daw ng construction ngayon. Yan tapos na sana nung plano nung 1984. Ang iniintay lang namin matapos yung pagpapagawa ng Magat Dam, sapagkat iniisip namin na, tingnan nyo, nung araw, ang lahat ng gumagawa ng mga prinsa mga foreigner. Yung Patabangan, ginawa namin Pilipino. Matagal na negosyo yan sa World Bank, sapagkat ginawa namin hindi competitive bidding. And then, pagkatapos ng Pantabangan, inilipat namin yung construction sa Magat. And isusunod sana namin nung pagkatapos ng 1989 na ililipat sa Kaliwa Dam para sa tubig na inumin, para sa hindi lang sa Manila, kundi including Laguna, Cavite, yan sana matuloy sapagkat kailangan natin yan. Yung katulad ng dito sa Cavite na yung pinagawa naming kanal, yung kanal na papuntang General Trias. Ngayon pinabayaan na yung kanal na yan. Yan sana ay kanal para sa irrigation. Gagamitin sana namin ang nuclear power plant na magbomba ng tubig galing sa Laguna de Bay para magkaroon ng irrigation ng Cavite. Ngunit ipinatigil ni President Cory Aquino. So, nasayang lang yung pagpapagawa ng kanal. Hindi tayo nakinabang sa irrigation sapagkat ang iniisip namin ay kinakailangan makapagtanim tayo ng maraming mga pananim kasi sa dami ng tao sa Cavite, malapit tayo sa Manila, kinakailangan ng Manila ng mga pagkain. Sana ating napakinabangan yan. Yan ang mga nasasayang.
Sir Jong, meron ka pa bang mga tanong diyan galing sa ating chat box, sa ating sa FB? Prof. Bagay, meron pa ba tayong mga tanong? Ayan, siguro ay huling katanungan na natin ito. Galing po ito sa isang anonymous na manonood natin. Prime Minister, sa hanay po naming mga kabataan, ano po ang pwede ninyong iwanang payo sa amin tungkol sa pangyayaring ito, tungkol sa New Society? Ano po ang pwede kaya namin ang pwede namin kayang maitulong magawa tungkol dito?
Itong talagang nasabi na nga ni Professor Jimenez, no? Sa aking mga eskwela. Kasi ako nagturo rin ako matagal din, mga 11 taon ako nagtuturo. At kaya ang gusto ko sana sa mga kabataan mag-aral ng gusto. Sapagkat sa pagbabasa, nakikita mo ang mga ginagawa ng ibang tao na mari mong magaya at para sa pagpapaunlad natin. Yun ang napaka-importante, yung bang magkaroon ng kaalaman at marunong kang mag-organisa at marunong kang mamahala ng ano ba ang dapat nating gawin na makakatulong sa ating mga kababayan. Yun ang napaka-importante sa kabataan kasi kung minsan nawiwili sila sa iba't ibang laruan, nahihimok sila sa masamang gawain na sana hindi ganoon ang mangyari sa ating mga kabataan na yung nung araw kami sa primary school, tinuturuan na kami magtanim, mag-gardening. Nung sa kuwan tinuturuan kami mag-carpentry. Kinakailangan matuto ka ng certain skills Ikaw lang sana, ewan ko, siguro meron pa naman tayong pagkakataon na even within the Cavite State University setup, kami nakapunta na sa Imo, sa Indang, sa Cavite City. Dito na ngayon. So, meron pa tayong mga pagkakataon na tingnan natin kung ano magagawa natin sa Cavite.
Yes, sir.
Katulad dito sa Tansa. Imagine, meron na kayong flour mill. Yung fishing ng Salinas, lipat na sa Tansa.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yung mga tinapa na export na natin sa Kuwam. Marami, tsaka napakarami pang malawak na mga sa ating kabukiran na kinakailangan na matamnan Matamnan. Kasi nung araw, we are a net food exporter. Ngayon, katakot-takot ang inaangkat nating pagkain. Bukod sa bigas, mais, karne, gatas, halos lahat na yung mga factory sa Manila, they are really factories of imported food materials. Yan. Kinakailangan natin ng pagkain.
Ayan, indeed, Prime Minister, kulang po yung maghapon natin sa isang
Oo,
napakamakabuluhang talakayan. And inaasahan po ng Cavite State University na ayun nga po, alumnus kayo, na muli ay makakasama namin kayo sa isang napakalawak na talakayan. Na hopefully yung aming mga manonood, lalo na yung mga mag-aaral namin sa Gen Ed 4, kasaysayan ng Pilipinas, ay marami kayong napulot. Sabi ko nga kanina, ito yung binabanggit ko na O ng equation. Di ba sabi ko kanina, tihaya o taob, ibabaw o ibaba. So ito yung binabanggit ko na O ng equation. Yung ibang pananaw. Na ayan, bago natin ibigay ang pangwakas na pananalita ng ating Dr. Maria Agnes Nuestro ng OBPAA, ay hayaan niyo munang igawad natin ang although informal na paggagawad, ang sertipiko ng pagkilala sa ating Prime Minister. At babasahin ko po ang nilalaman. Republic of the Philippines, Cavite State University Quincentennial Committee, and Cavite State University Tansa. Certificate of Recognition is awarded to Honorable Cesar Enrique Aguinaldo Virata in grateful acknowledgement of his distinguished and invaluable participation as resource speaker during the Cavite State University second monthly webinar series with the theme Ang Batas Militar ng 1972, Iba pang kwento sa likod nito, in celebration of quincentennial commemorations in the Philippines with the topic The Philippine Socio-Economic Plans and Programs 1972 to 1984. Given this 24th day of September 2021, signed Dr. Hernando D. Robles, President, Cavite State University. Muli po, napakaraming salamat po sa ating Prime Minister.
Maraming salamat.
Yes sir, panghuling pananalita po siguro bago na alam naming busy kayo, kaya po tuwan-tuwa kami na paunlakan nyo kami sa oras na ito. Huling pananalita po galing sa ating butihing Prime Minister.
Well, ako po ay lubos na nagpapasalamat sa pagkakataong itong makadalo din sa panayam tungkol sa mga ginawa namin noong lumipas na panahon noong umiiral ang batas militar na kami po ay hindi na bahala tungkol dito sa lakad ng batas militar, kundi yung aming trabaho ay tungkol sa pagpapaunlad ng ating bayan. So marami pong salamat.
Salamat po. Bigyan natin ng masigabong virtual na palakpakan ng ating kagalang-galang dating punong ministro Cesar Virata. Ayan, at hindi po kumpleto ang ating webinar kung hindi natin madidinig ang pangwakas na pananalita ng ating chairperson ng CBSU Quincentennial Commemoration Committee. Gusto ko pong ibigay sa inyo ang pangalawang pangulo para sa mga pang-akademikong gawain ng Cavite State University na ang alam ko kagagaling lang ni Vice President sa isa pang webinar. So ibibigay ko po sa inyo ang ating chairperson, Maria Agnes Nuestro, Perido Nuestro. Ma'am, take it away po.
Salamat. Maraming salamat, Dean Hill Ramos. Isang ligtas at mapagpalayang araw sa ating mga kasamahan, sa ating mga panauhing tagapagsalita at sa mga bumubuo ng CVSU QCP Committee sa pamumuno ni Dean Hill Ramos at ng ating mga guro at kawani na naririto ngayon. Isang mainit na pagbati po at nais ko pong ipahatid ang aking pagpupugay sa naging matagumpay na pagdiriwang ng quincentennial at ito po ay maituturing nating isang milestone sa history ng ating bansa, sapagkat ipinagdiriwang natin ang ika-500 taon ng first circumnavigation of the world. At bilang pangwakas na mensahe, nais ko pong ipabatid sa lahat ang mainit na pasasalamat sa lahat ng ating mga kasama at panauhin at sa tagapagpangasiwa ng pagdiriwang na ito, gayon din sa lahat ng mga adhikain at gawain ng Cavite Historical Society. Ito po ay isang magandang pagkakataon na tayo ay nabigyan ng pagkakataon na magbalik tanaw at mapalawig ang ating mga kaalaman sa mga naganap na simulain ng ating bansa. Ang kapayapaan na ating nakamit at katatagan ng mga hamon ng buhay, ang mga ito po ay nakakamit natin dahil sa mga bayani at mapupugay nating mga pinuno. Isa na rin po dito ang ating Prime Minister Virata. Nais po nating ipahatid ang ating personal na pagbati sa ating mga panauhin sa araw na ito, Dr. Jose Victor Jimenez ng History Department ng De La Salle University, Dasmariñas, at ang ating pong former Prime Minister Cesar Virata, ang Pangulo ng Cavite Historical Society. Marami pong salamat sa pagbabahagi at sa pagbibigay ng oportunidad sa CVSU na maging kaakibat ng mga ganitong gawain. Salamat po, Prime Minister.
Salamat po. Salamat po.
Hindi ko na po palalawigin pa ang aking mensahe. Muli po ay binabati ko ang lahat para sa tagumpay ng pagdiriwang ng Quincentennial Commemoration the Philippines na hatid ng ating pamantasan sa pakikipagtulungan sa Cavite Historical Society. Marami pong salamat at isang mapagpala at ligtas na araw po sa ating lahat.
Yan, maraming salamat po, Vice President. At bago po tayo mag-photo ops maya-maya ay gusto ko lang pong magkaroon ng ilang pabatid. Tungkol po ito sa susunod na third monthly webinar natin. Ang magiging host po natin ay ang Campus Bacoor. At sila po magiging punong abala naman. Ang mga posibleng topic po natin sana ay yung deklarasyon po ng
deklarasyon.
Opo, magandang matalakay din po sana natin as alternative readings, ano. At saka po ang plano namin ay iimbitahan sana namin ang kaanak ng dating senador Ramon Revilla Sr. para naman po sa ako taga-Bacoor din po sila. So yun po, at although tentative naman po yung titulo pa natin. At kung magkangyari po yun, baka po ang isa nating makasamang tagapagsalita ay yun namang presidente ng Cavite Historical Society. Nandito po siya kanina, hindi ko lang po alam kung nandito po ulit at nakabalik si Dr. Manny. Opo, at yun po sanang isang target din namin na maging kapanayam naman. Tapos siguro po isa sa mga kaanak ng mga Revilla. No? So yun po ang isa sa ating mga announcement. At syempre po, acknowledgement po. Ayun, si Mayor, opo. Si Mayor Strike. Ay, si Mayor Lani. Si Mayor Lani.
Oo, si Mayor Lani.
Opo, opo. So posible rin nga po na siyang magrepresenta ng Clan Revilla. Ayan, at gusto ko po syempre pasalamatan sa pangunguna ni Dr. Manny Calairo, syempre, no? Ever supportive ang Komisyonado Calairo. So National Historical Commission of the Philippines. Syempre po ang CBSU Tansa Campus, at kanina po ay nagpakita rin po kami ng ABP tungkol po sa LGU Tansa. So maraming salamat po sa LGU Tansa at kolaborasyon pa po sa susunod na pangyayari. May mga nakalinya pa rin po kami, isa na po diyan yung panunumpa sa simbahan ng Tansa, pagkagaling po sa Tejero Convention. So isasama po natin yan sa ating webinar. At syempre po sa ating naunang tagapagsalita kanina, si Dr. Joey Jimenez ng PLSU. And then syempre, ayan, ang ating galanggalang dating punong ministro, Cesar Enrique Aguinaldo Virata. At nabanggit nga po kanina at nagbibiroan kami nung kasama. Ayun ako, very informative talaga ang panayam ni Lolo, kasi nga nabanggit ko po kanina yung mga apo at saka yung apo na sa tuhod, no? At kumusta na rin po kay Ma'am. Ayan, at syempre hindi matatapos ang ating acknowledgement na ito kung hindi ko babanggitin ang aming mahal na Pangulo. Dr. Hernando D. Robles for his unwavering support po dito sa aming palatuntunan na idinadaos. Nasabi nga namin hitik ito kasi Agosto hanggang Disyembre ng 2021 tapos buong taon ng 2022 no ay nandiyan po yung webinar natin. So marami pa tayong tatalakayin dito. At syempre po si Dr. Maria Agnes Nuestro ng OBPAA, mga guro, mag-aaral ng CBSU. Ang alam ko may mga dumalo rin sa atin dito galing DepEd. So iba pa po yung personal kong imbitasyon sa taga-Adhika, no, sa taga-Bakas, ayan, taga Salasal Tap, no, at saka sa UP may mga naimbita rin po ako. Siyempre sa lahat na nagsidalo. At of course sa atin pong moderator, si Professor Jong Bagay. Ayan. Siyempre pasasalamatan po natin yung Task Force Quincentennial sa pamumuno po ng ating butihing OBPA, Dr. Ayan, ipa-plus po ni Sir Wilbert. Ayan.
Yan.
Yan, si Ma'am Joyce Ilagan po ang ating co-chair. Poging-pogi po si Hil Ramos. Ayan po, si Ma'am Joy Plete. Ayan. So muli po sa lahat ng mga nakasama natin sa lumampas na sa oras na webinar natin ito na wala naman po tayong problema dyan. Naasahan po talaga natin yan. So muli po ang pasasalamat ng siyempre ng Cavite State University, Cavite State University Tansa. So salamat po sa lahat ng tumulong. At ngayon pa lang po ay akin ang idinideklara na at naideklara na ni Dr. Agnes tagumpay sa matagumpay nating webinar ngayong hapong ito. Nasabi ko nga, hindi magiging matagumpay ang ating webinar series na ito, ikalawang leg, kung hindi sa pamamagitan ng ating pinakiusapan na maging tagapanayam, Dr. Joe Jimenez at siyempre ang ating butihing Prime Minister. At siguro po, bago natin wakasan, mag-photo ops po muna tayo. Para sa, ayan.
Inaanyayahan po ang lahat na pakibuksan po natin ang ating mga camera. Kasalukuyan po tayo po ay may 5 slides. So unahin ko po muna yung first slides. Maaari lamang po pakibuksan po ang inyong mga camera po. Kung hindi po naman, ay ako po ay mag-i-start na po. Okay po. 1, 2, 3, smile. Okay po, pangalawang slides po. Maaari pong pakibuksan ng inyong mga camera. Okay po. 1, 2, 3, smile. Dako naman po tayo sa pangatlong slides po. Maaari lamang pong pakibuksan ng inyong mga camera. Mga ma'am, sirs, mga students po. Pakibuksan po ang ating mga camera. Inaanyayahan po ulit na pakibuksan po ang ating mga camera. Okay, 1, 2, 3, smile. Dumako naman po tayo sa pang-apat na slides po. Inaanyayahan po muli na pakibuksan po ang inyong mga camera po. Students, ma'am and sirs, visitors po. 1, 2, 3, smile. Sa pang-last po na slides po, maaari lamang po pakibuksan po ang ating mga camera. Okay, 1, 2, 3, smile. Okay po, marami pong salamat, sir. Okay.
Salamat.
Ayan, muli po ang pasasalamat sa ating Prime Minister. Sir,
Okay,
salamat
thank you.
po. Salamat po.
Thank you.
Ma'am Agnes, maraming salamat din po. At doon po sa mga hindi pa nakakapagsagot ng kanilang evaluation, ay nag-plus na po kanina ang ating technical. Ay maaari nyo na pong sagutan. Paumanhin po at medyo nadidelay lamang po yung pagbibigay natin ng sertipiko. Pero panigurado po ay makakarating po yung sertipiko. No? At tuloy-tuloy po yan. Nadidelay-delay nga lang at alam niyo naman ang sitwasyon sa kasalukuyan. So dito po ay sinasara na po natin. Ang sabi nga ng Dr. Agnes ay matagumpay na second leg ng ating monthly webinar series. At sa susunod po, ay andyan po si Miss Cathy ng Bacoor. Isang malaking hamon po ang iniiwanan ng QCP. At of course, yun na may napag-usapan na natin before. So maraming salamat po sa dumalo muli. Huwag pong madadalang dumalo. Isang makabuluhang webinar meeting na naman po or webinar series sa susunod na buwan. Muli po, maraming salamat. Shoutout pala kay Sir Pelayo. Ayan, siyempre po sa recession po natin yung ating CBSU.
Laging patnubay ng may kapal, sa yakap mo ay langit ang buhay at laging makulay. May isang siglo ng nagdaan, bayan mong kawitan kung saan ay sinilang ang kalayaan, ang lahat ay nag